RPG! 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 RPG!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this unexpected Sunday night stream. Hopefully everyone is doing well and is feeling well. It's nice to be back streaming multiple times per week as we are wont to do. So it's good to be here. What's up, Ken? Hopefully you're having a good Sunday night over there on the West Coast. I won't say the best coast, but I've enjoyed my times on the West Coast. Jake, no, Jake. Brayflox, thank you for the 5-month resub. Appreciate it. So what was I trying to fix? So it's been snowing here. Windy. I hesitate to say blizzard, but blizzard. And we lost power a handful of times today. And so my computer, obviously turned off. And I turned my computer back on. And it must have put it into some sort of like safe mode, or something was messed up with the Windows Defender systems. And so it wasn't letting me. So normally when I make a YouTube stream, I just take a stream that is similar to that stream. Like if it's a first look, I take the last first look and I just reuse those settings. And so when I do these late night streams, I just use the last setting. And then I went through my processes, uploaded my thumbnail, and then just hit go. But what I didn't pay attention to is that the thumbnail failed to upload. So the thumbnail was from like 30 streams ago, talking about game design. Not that most of our streams don't end up being about game design anyways. But I was like trying to figure it out, like, why isn't this working? And it was because my Windows Defender firewall thing was all messed up because my computer had turned off due to a power outage. So hopefully that won't be an issue going forward. Kadrissa, you can watch wherever you want. Wherever you want. We only started streaming on Twitch because people are like, Derek, I literally have free money to give you in the form of a Twitch Prime sub. You're an idiot for not doing this. And also, I had always said I wouldn't really want to stream video games on my YouTube channel. And I said, but I would do it on a Twitch channel because that way I feel like I can get away with it, Yeah, free money is great. And at one point, we had like 150 subs over there on Twitch. Now it's down to like 90 or something, or 80. It has dropped down. Let's see where we're at. 87. Unfortunately, and I say that, again, it's free money. The way that Twitch Prime subs work is because you don't actually pay for them. They only let you do it, and it only lasts for 1 month. And so people will give me a free Twitch Prime sub, and if they don't come back the next month and do it again, then it expires. So, it's fine. I mean, I'm not like upset about it or anything. Volume is low. Mr. Goats, I don't think so. You guys let me know if it's low. I'm not like peaking, if that's what you mean. At least I don't think so. That is correct. Yeah, a Prime sub is like, I don't know, $5 or something like that. And I think a Twitch Prime sub is like $2 and change, give or take. All right, I can give it a little bit more kick here. Hold on a second. Gotta go to my compressor settings. I don't know where my Rodecaster is. There it is. Molotov plugin interface. Oh, it's open already. All right. Let's give 2 decibels of makeup gain. Hopefully that is a little bit better. It is like a micro loan from Jeff Bezos. It's exactly right. Jeff Bezos is paying me now. All right. Well, my meters are showing me tickling the red, so I won't go any louder than this, because if I go much louder than this, I'm going to start clipping. So anyways, there literally is no point for tonight. So somebody asked, what is tonight about? There is no point of tonight. The reason I decided to stream is because I got a new light, and I spent the last hour color balancing it within my camera, making some profile shifts, changing a couple of settings as I could try to dial this light in. And since I was here sitting at my computer looking at, vector scopes and, YUV and RGB parades for the last hour, I was like, all right, well, I'm here anyways, and I just got the light situated where I want it, and I'm sure I'll tweak it a little bit more. But I was like, I might as well just stream. So here we are. Well, welcome. So for funsies, we do have two goals. We have a super chat goal of end of the year TTRPG ratings. This is something that we've been kind of noodling around with on the Patreon. And the idea is to go look at all of the TTRPGs that came out this year, or maybe all the ones that I covered this year, and kind of give them a rating, or maybe a tier rating or a ranking or something. And then also I have a tip goal, which is to convince some knights to come on. It's the holiday season, and I know we got some people scheduled on, but maybe I can get Kaz or Tim or Bob or whatever to hop onto a stream and hang out with us like back in the old days. That'll be a lot of fun. Wes, great to hear it. Draw Steel is awesome. Exactly. We can rate it from 1 to 5 bridges. We can also rate it 0 bridges if we don't think it would bridge at all. Well, that would be awesome. Hey, listen, I don't care. I mean, I do care if you give it to me, but I'm just glad you're using it for something that you care about. That's all that's important to me. You're paying for it anyways. You might as well use it and give that money to some content creator that you enjoy and appreciate. Did we at least decide on what game with the Friday crew? Yes, we announced it on the Patreon on Friday. So we got together on Friday, and it was going to be a session -1. So for those of you who aren't aware, I more or less have been running in a Friday night game since I was 12 years old. So 30 years. And that has always been our day that we play. And most of the time I've been the GM, but there have been other people who come in, including especially Smith, who have come in and GM'd. Now, as people have grown up, well, let me rephrase it. While other people have grown up, I have not grown up. That people have gotten busy and stuff like that. And it's been particularly bad, I would say, the last year and a half. So in 2024, we wrapped up a Forbidden Lands campaign, which I had been running. And we originally expected that to take about 6 months. And it ended up taking about 12 months. Not because we played so dang much, but because we ended up playing half as often as we expected to. And of course, this is 2024. So I had the house fire, and I had my panic attack in Vegas, where I ended up going to the emergency room, and then ended up having to see a bunch of specialists because I didn't know what was wrong with me. It turned out I just had anxiety, yada, yada, yada. So, some of that was my fault, for lack of a better way, if you want to say it, my fault. But as we went into 2025, I felt like we were, doing a little bit better. And, Smith said, hey, rewind. I was feeling a little bit better. And I said, hey guys, I'm ready to start up a new game. Cause the Forbidden Lands campaign ended about like October or something of last year. And so November, December, January, I was like, hey guys, into February. And I was like, hey guys, I'm going to start a new campaign. And so we talked about it, and we decided to run Fabula Ultima. And we ran a session 0 for me and 5 players, my home team. And that was going to be me, Bob, Smith, Tim, Kaz, and George, our buddy George, who's never been on the channel. You see him in chat all the time. Obvious. Anyways, and on the Discord. But then right after that, my dad died, and I lost my job. And so my life was kind of in disaster mode. So Smith had basically said, "Hey, I'll run a PF2 campaign, or I'll run a campaign." So because I basically said, "Guys, I can't run this for Fabula Ultima campaign right now. So I'll run a I got to just focus on the channel and trying to get things working, and I was in a good spot." So Smith said, "Okay, I'll run a PF2 channel." Or sorry, a PF2 game. And so it was like a PF2 cross Starfinder 2 cross Battle Zoo campaign. And we were all making kind of these weird, crazy, weird characters. And Smith made this kind of like post-apocalyptic, very dying Earth kind of campaign. And we were theoretically supposed to play on Fridays, every Friday, over at Smith's house in his basement, which is where we have been playing in person for a long time. And then Kaz, our buddy who lives on the West Coast, because we're all here in Ohio, always joins us in remotely. We have a camera set up and a monitor, and he joins us via a Discord chat channel. And we have a Blue Yeti mic that, in Omni mode, so he can hear what's going on. It works okay. However, then everybody else's life kind of went to shit, including Smith's. And we ended up only playing that PF2 campaign maybe 5 or 6 times this year. And it basically kind of died off after that. So at this point, we hadn't really been playing much at all. So we finally decided, hey, you know what? Let's try to make this happen again. So we got together with the crew, and one of the decisions that we made, particularly because Smith really can't commit to joining us every week, was to just do it fully online. Make it easier for the folks with kids, obviously for our buddy Kaz, who's remote anyways. So we got together and we talked about like pros and cons of different games, and we did all the stuff. And eventually we put together a ballot, and we used a ranked choice voting app for everybody to rank their choices and vote. And we used ranked choice voting. And the winner was Fabula Ultima, which I'm pleased to say was in everyone's top 2 or top 3 at least. Pretty sure. I think almost everybody was in their top 2. I'm sorry. I think everybody was I know everybody was in their top 3, but I think it might have been everybody's number 1 or number 2 pick. So it's not like somebody won and somebody absolutely hated it. So that was really cool, which made it a lot easier. And then the good news is that, as we were kind of like trying to remember what we were doing a year ago, Bob was like, "Well, I really liked my character. Do you still have that?" And I was like, "I think so." And because we had kind of been noodling around with it on Foundry at the time. And so I found the old characters, and I kind of brought up the Foundry server, and a bunch of people were like, "Oh, I forgot how awesome this was." Anyways, long story short, we kind of ended up doing a session 0 there because pretty much everybody kind of kept their characters. We made some tweaks and adjustments because when we originally were going to do it, we were going to use technospheres, which are, kind of complicated and wonky. But we decided in the spirit of making things super easy and much more compatible with Foundry, since they are not still working, that we would just use normal Fabula Ultima, for lack of a better word. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to do. So Bob is a kind of a scoundrel Han Solo-esque sky pirate character. Again, the world is a sort of a techno fantasy world. We've discussed this before. We were going to use it for Daggerheart. It's called the Shattered Lands. And the core premise is that you had this world which sometime in the past underwent this drastic catastrophe, and the world essentially cracked and shattered. Now, it didn't like explode. I mean, obviously it was not good for everybody. So you could think of the chunks and pieces of this world, which are called shards, are still floating around in a roughly sphere-like shape. So you have a planet that is now broken up. And so you have sort of the core, and then you have sort of the outer rim. And so it's almost more like a spherical galaxy, except it's worlds. And some of these shards are quite small, no more than, say, a giant asteroid boulder floating through space. And other ones are very large, right? Almost continent size, where you can have, ecologies and stuff. And of course, it's magic. So, we give ourselves a lot of grace there. And the people or whoever blamed magic, right? So for the destruction. Now, of course, this is, one of those mysteries that is to be found out. And so, of course, there is an empire, of course, which is a rose. And basically, they treat magic as a crime. They think that, the free use of magic. Think very Red Aja from Wheel of Time, if you know Red Aja. from Wheel of Time, where they think the idea that basically unrestricted, unmitigated use of magic that's what caused the cataclysm. Basically, that's what caused the breaking of the world. And so their goal is to sort of police and keep these magic users, sort of in check. But at the same time, they have discovered a way to utilize the power of magic in what they believe is a safer and more controlled way. And again, if you're a fan of Wheel of Time, it's very shades of Shan Chan, right? With the daemon and the soldoms and the daemons and the adams. Not so much as they are enslaving magic users, but they have discovered a way to sort of use technology to control magic, aka magic tech. And so that's how we get to this sort of techno fantasy world where the Empire sort of has this monopoly on the use of magitech, and they have been, they only Imperial approved magitech is the safe way to use magic. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of that. And one of the characters, Tim's character, is from sort of a rebel people who worship the elements and the elemental spirits. They're kind of almost like benders, and so they have this. They believe in the purity and the sanctity of magic. So they in this way they are sort of seen as an abomination by the Empire, and the Empire wants to wipe them out. And Tim's character is kind of like the Black Panther of Wakanda, of his people. So he is like the chosen one. He's not the ruler of his people, but he is sort of the appointed, anointed champion to be. Now he's young and he's inexperienced, aka he's low level, but he has sort of been raised with the idea that he is going to be the savior and the champion of his people. So there's sort of shades of Black Panther plus Avatar in that aspect. And right now, because he's low level, he's just a firebender. So you could imagine it's almost like the way that Korra was. He's like a young Roku, right? He's very proficient with fire bending, but he hasn't picked up the other elements yet. So again, we're just stealing from IPs and stuff that we like. We could totally go True Power for Wheel of Time. I mean, that's for me. That's a fantastic. I mean, Zen Bullet. We don't know what caused the cataclysm, right? The mythology is that it was the unrestricted the use of magic. So maybe, who knows? Maybe there was some sort of incident at the Colon Dawn, right? What's up, Owie? What's up, Aaron? Haven't seen you in a while. Glad to see you there. Yes, Alara, another common love there. What's up? Also, we have some super chats there.
Edward tipped $20. Please put half towards the ranking and half towards a guest, please. Any update on Tor Solo game? Thanks again for all you do.
Thank you, Edward.
Nimble reaches, smiley face emoji.
Nimble reaches indeed. Yeah, let me go ahead and throw that over there for you. Update on Tor Solo is that I am supposed to next Sunday. Excuse me. I almost don't want to jinx it. That's why I almost haven't really been saying it. So I'm hesitant to say it, but next Sunday, again, I subtracted 10 from the tip. The super chat sometimes takes a little bit to update because of YouTube. Next Sunday, we are supposed to kick off our One Ring in studio actual play. So it's only going to be like a 2-shot because we're just playing the starter set, because Bob and Tim and Bob's brother, Danny, don't necessarily want to commit to a full run of the One Ring. But who knows? You never know, right? This could be the beginning of something beautiful. But I have never GM'd the One Ring. I've only played it, and I played it at a con. So I'd like to get some real sessions under my belt, just to get a better feel for the game and how it flows before I start the One Ring. So that being said, I expect the One Ring will kick off after the Yule phase. So after the holidays, as we move into after Christmas, as we move into the new year, or even just that last week or something of December, I think that's when we're going to kick off the Moria solo project. Now, for me, remember, I don't like to half-ass things generally. So, if I'm doing Moria, that means I got to get a custom, I got to make a custom overlay, right? I either have to find one and buy it. And a lot of times what I do is I find and buy. I'm good enough at Photoshop, and, I can use some of the other assets from my like Envato and other media subscriptions that I can usually hack things together. So a lot of times I'll buy an overlay from you know, somebody who makes it on Etsy or whatever, and then I will Photoshop it and chop it up and make it to fit my needs and kind of reuse their assets. And I might use a little bit of Photoshop, like generative AI, to sort of like fix, you know, weird oddities where I you know, cut something out. But anyways, so I want to make a One Ring, or specifically I want to make a Moria, right? Khazad-dûm, dwarven themed live stream overlay, you know, have tips and super chat elements that really work. And I really want to see what tools are available to me inside of this extension so that I can better control the tips and figure out a way that maybe there's some other tools in there that we can use. I haven't really fully explored what this thing is capable of, but I really want to use that so that we can have that interactive point and make it easier and seamless for people to interact with that element. So yeah, again, I'm trying to think of that. Figure out ways to make it slick and nice and have everybody be able to see it really well. Like, you know, should I run it on Foundry, or, you know, should I get a camera mounted over my thing here and, you know, roll the dice in person? You know, those are some, I mean, both are at this point for me just as easy. I just don't know what's going to be more fun and more visceral in that respect. So yeah, that's where we're at with the One Ring stream as well. For sure. So thank you. All right. So Southern Charm, what's up? MD and PhD. Not trying to interrupt. Keep going. Here's a super chat for the stream. Also, are these checks deductible as charitable giving? I am not a registered 403C, so I'm going to guess no, they are not. That would be my guess. But thank you, Southern Charm. I appreciate you. It should be. I don't know. But if I register myself as a 403C, then I can't make a profit, right? Well, good news is I usually don't. So, but then again, I am allowed to pay myself. I don't know. I'd have to see how that works. I think it would be a bit weird if I was registered as that. All right. Sorry, I missed a bunch of chat here. T.I. Sagent says, for my 40th this weekend, congrats, the Filthy 40. I ran 2 one-shots for friends, Tor 2nd Edition and Mothership, obviously an Xmas theme. Die Hard module, of course, yes, naturally. Very cool. Both very, very, very cool games, I think. I'm obviously a fan of the One Ring, of course. What's up, Nutmeg? Haven't been here in a while, and I'm glad I caught a stream. Just found out that my professor worked with Avery Alder, creator of Monster Hearts, out in Alberta. So cool. Very cool. Avery Alder is a gem. She is creator of several of my favorite games, Monster Hearts being one of them, and Quiet Year being another. G Helmet, do you plan on using a skyship to travel between the shards? Oh, yeah. I didn't identify Bob is a sky pirate. I believe I said that. Yeah, no. We're totally going to have a skyship to travel between the shards. But you see, when the planet shattered, the raw aether kind of broke free and now is dangerous, right? So you have these aether storms. If you're familiar with Zendikar and the Royal, so you have basically travel between the wild spaces of the shards is very dangerous, especially if you go out of the sort of imperial controlled, lines of protection. So that's where, the skyship comes in particularly handy. And of course, the quickest way to get to pretty much any place in the Shattered Lands would be to go through the core. But naturally, the core is this, raging elemental maelstrom of all of these sort of chaotic energies and, elemental chaotic flowings and stuff like that. Like, the elemental chaos turned up to 11 from 4th edition. And so naturally, no one goes that way. So, if it's our version of like the Kessel Run, right? Like if you needed to get to the other side of the the Shattered Lance in a quick, you could say we could always take, the path through the core. Or what was that from? That was from Phantom Menace, right? Where they take the planet core. Never really quite understood that, because wouldn't the implication of that be that the planet's core was full of water? Because don't they take a submarine? Anyways. Collapsible. I like the idea of categories and awards like best art, worst editing, instead of just pure rankings. Oh, okay. So do it more like an award show. Oh, I don't mind that idea, Collapsible. We could have a proposal. You know what we could do, Collapsible, is we could go ahead and we could have like nominations for categories, and then people could nominate, and then I just pick which one I think is the favorite. Yeah, maybe that's what we do. Sweet, Den back. Love to see it. Kendall, I started the first stream today and noticed yes. So I went live stream. I was like, shit, I need an overlay. So I went to like nerdordie or something.com, and I bought one that seemed not horrible. And I remember at the time, Vin and some other people were like, Derek, this is horrible. And I was like, don't worry. It's just temporary. And that was 4 years ago or whatever. No clue yet, Wes. No clue. Some sort of tip or something like that. I'm not sure exactly, Wes. Maybe some gold tickets. I'm not sure. Nice, K-Tube. So K-Tube just finished up a small FU Techno Fantasy campaign. We used Technospheres. My player did not care for them. Happy to hear you all are getting to play. Yeah. So when we originally were going to play Fabula Ultima, and one of the reasons that we were going to use Technospheres is because Smith was playing. And Smith is a huge Final Fantasy 14 online fan, as well as like Guild Wars and some other stuff. And so Smith really loved the idea of sort of being able to like swap out his class basically, at will. And so Smith loved the idea of like having a Technosphere that had a bunch of, white mage, spiritist stuff, and then another Technosphere that had a bunch of like Guardian Darkblade stuff. And then in his mind it was like, swap the weapon, go into like switch from a heavy armed melee tank to a backline white mage by sort of changing your dress sphere or whatever it is in Final Fantasy 14. And so he was beside himself because he wanted to play it. Because really what Smith wanted to play was Final Fantasy 14 Online. This is before the game actually came out, the Final Fantasy 14 Online TTRPG. But since he is not a primary player in this game, the rest of us were kind of like, yeah, we're fine with just playing normal Fabula Ultima. Plus, although Shorn, member of the Knights of the Last Call Patreon, has said that they are continuing to work on implementing Technospheres into the League of Fabulous Developers Fabula Ultima Foundry module. It is still not 100% working, so it's kind of a pain in the butt to deal with there. Elemental, you say? Yes, you might say it was. You might say it's the elemental chaos. You might say it's the rage of elements. The maelstrom, like Alara. Look, Pumpkin, I have said many, many, many times before that the reason why my games are good is because they are all just resonance with other established tropes that even if you never played Shards of Alara, you understand it. You get it. What's up? When am I going to do my next Draw Steel? Great question. I don't know. We have some first looks that are coming up first. We're going to be doing a first look, I think, Land of Eam. Somebody just paid for something today with their tickets. Land of Eam. I don't remember. Land of Eam, Heroic Deeds, which is a indie TTRPG published by a member of our Patreon, and Dolmenwood. So we had a very significant Dolmenwood contribution. Someone really wanted me to take a look at it, so definitely excited to do that. It's a beautiful looking book. Yeah, again, the whole pay-as-you-go thing kind of screwed up their whole timeline with that. Not to mention, of course, their unparalleled success. Oh, I'm sure that there are genuinely, truly creative people out there who can really, come up with new paradigm-breaking ideas and concepts. I'm just not that person. I'm not as creative as Robert Jordan. I'm not a world famous author who kind of redefined fantasy for an entire generation. I'm not the Magic the Gathering, the most successful card game / physical game ever, creative director team. So, good artists create, great artists steal. And especially if you're not selling it and you have no reason to feel bad about it, I steal ruthlessly. Anyways. Oh, yes, if you can like this video. Actually, don't like this video because this isn't what I want people to watch. This is just for us. Of course. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, old Magic. I mean, that's the sad part, Pumpkin. It's like if you go back in time, some of the Magic worlds, some of the Magic concepts, and some of the world building that they did was just so awesome. And now it's just universes beyond. So you're not even getting that anymore. You're just getting either Return to X, right? Return to Lorwyn, Return to Ravnica, right? Return to Innistrad, Return to Zendikar, Return to Amonkhet, Return to Theros, Return to, right? And then Return to Kaladesh, except they renamed it. Or now it's Universes Beyond. So it's Avatar, or it's Marvel, or it's Lord of the Rings, or it's Ghostbusters, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Or it's not really world building, it's just a jokey hat set, right? I don't consider Dreadmorn to have any sort of world building. I mean, I'm sure it does have some sort of concept of a world building, or Duskmorn, sorry, not Dreadmorn. Duskmorn, but really the lore of Duskmorn is, let's just make this about horror tropes, not really a structured world with its own, mechanical lore synergies. It's just, hey, what are the tropes of 80s horror movies? Let's put that into a Magic set and kind of, patch it together. You're very aware, Pumpkin, of what a hat set is, so I don't need to tell you. Same thing with Outlaws at Thunder Junction, or Aether Drift, or whatever the Ravnica one was, Murders at Karloff Manor. Sorry, I'm just getting caught up here. Well, this is true, Tondalus. I love it, but Robert Jordan, which is a pen name, by the way, but Robert Jordan, who penned the Wheel of Time, started off in the 80s by writing a lot of Conan the Barbarian novels for Tor Fantasy. And I got to tell you, it's not his greatest work. I love it, but a lot of people will tell you it's garbage, but I do love it. That's right. This isn't a real. We're not really getting into anything particularly deep here. Sectomancer, I think you're giving me too much credit. I think you'd be surprised at how blatantly I steal, even to the point where sometimes I'll start to think of something I'm like, oh, I could do it this way, and then I'll be like, no. Then it won't be exactly like what I'm copying. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I probably will never use it. To be clear, we'll probably do. Again, someone made a very generous donation to the channel, And it's a game that I'm interested and excited to look at. I got a chance to look through the physical product of it at PAX, and it is a very pretty book, and it's well made and it's well put together. And I think the Exalted Funeral people do a great job with it. But we'll probably spend a session, talking about like the mechanics, which is really just BX D&D. But we've never really talked about BX D&D before, so there's that. And then a whole separate thing is about like the actual setting and how they've built this sandbox hex crawl. Excuse me. And I think they've done it in a really good way. So there's that. Tundalus says, I had the best time with Dolmenwood. Chloroformed a basilisk with a magic rose and then got it to petrify itself with a mirror when it woke up. 11 out of 10. Now that sounds like a classic old school D&D moment for sure. Yeah, I mean, I quit Magic the Gathering a long time ago, which is why I still play it. But I don't play it like I used to play it, right? I do a handful of drafts here and there throughout the year, but that's about it. Also, I think Commander is an abomination. Sorry. Those Conan novels are great. Not just the Robert Jordan ones, but all of those like Torf ones from the 80s and 90s. I think I have like almost all of them. I had like a master list. I was trying to collect them all. Now I could like go on eBay and buy them, but it doesn't feel the same. I used to pick them up at like half-price bookstores back in the late 90s and stuff, and it was fun. But yeah, now you don't. Now half-price bookstores don't have books or anything, so. I did not see a video about using dance choreography theory in your TTRPGs, but well done, whoever did that. There you go. See, my most recent TTRPG setting was straight up stolen from Wheel of Time, Final Fantasy, Magic the Gathering, and Bloodborne. There you go. Morrow, I mean, I consider Morrow to be the greatest game designer of all time, so there is definitely that. You're fine. We're not really talking about anything, and I don't intend to talk about anything. Really, if anybody has a thought, concept, throw it out there. Throw a super chat or tip. I'll be happy to talk about it. But or just whatever. It's mostly just a Sunday night. It's you all have work tomorrow. I don't, but also keep in mind I won't be getting paid, so it's kind of like a pro and a con. It's like one of my favorite quotes from Office Space. You know what I'd do if I had $1 million? I'll tell you what I'd do. I'd do nothing. And he goes, you don't need $1 million to do nothing, man. Shit, I got a cousin. He's broke, don't do shit. Morrow's hatred has only emerged, in my opinion, in the last X amount of years, mostly because they see him now as a corporate shill who has also gone back and reneged on some of the things that he previously said they would never do, particularly around like the Universes Beyond stuff and like all the corporate IP and stuff in Magic. And a lot of people think he's kind of a yes man who toes the company line. But I mean, he does work for the company, so I don't know what else you expect of him. It's not like, yeah. So anyways, you have work now. You're working hard or you're hardly working. Thomas, you want to know the best wacky or odd source of inspiration to steal ideas for a adventure? You ready? I mean, probably not modern day because they suck and they're weird and kids today are lame. But if you go watch like 80s and 90s cartoons, those are like the best. Whether it's Thundercats or He-Man or Jason the Wheeled Warriors or Thundar the Barbarian or Pirates of Darkwater or the Conan the Barbarian cartoon show or, millions and millions and millions. I mean, they're simple and direct and they might seem very overly basic, and in a way they are, but that's okay because players are stupid. So, if you try to make something, I think a lot of people make their they try to make their campaigns way too complicated. And I'm not saying that players are stupid. It's just, they're playing a role-playing game, you don't try to make it into this Shakespearean thing, just try to make it simple, and bait, so basic, and those cartoons deliver. And they are also like 22 minutes with a commercial. So you might not say there's a lot there, but the thing is, role-playing games move at a much slower pace than a movie or a book series. And so by you could take a 22-minute plot of a cartoon adventure, and that could literally turn into, 3 to 5 sessions of a tabletop role-playing game, especially if your game, like most fantasy role or most TTRPGs, has some sort of combat system that takes forever. Exactly. Well, number one, some players can't see the forest for the trees. And then number two, some players don't give a shit about the trees or the forest, right? They're just there to roll dice and shoot shit or whatever, What's the best post-apocalyptic game assuming a sort of Fallout theme? How about Fallout? Modifius did a Fallout game. So I'm going to guess Fallout. Since there's literally a Fallout game. I love that Beowulf says, I keep on finding myself thinking about that Traveler cruise liner game of yours and how much I like that concept. Meanwhile, for us, it was just us like trolling ourselves. Oh, correct. Well, I do think that some players do suck. I'm mostly just saying that, a lot of the times, unless you're literally spoon feeding your players the adventure, it's very unclear. Like, it might be very clear to you as a game master what the plot is going to be. But for players, it's very difficult, right? They're looking at your world through this very tiny peephole, which is basically the exact questions that they answer or they ask you and exactly what you tell them. They don't know anything else, and they can't read your mind. So it's difficult to put 2 and 2 together very, very often. So I give my players, one, a lot of grace, and number two, I give them a lot of information, because I just, like, you could literally tell the players, okay, what you need to do is go to the waterfall, and they'll be like, oh, guys, I don't know where we're supposed to go. I mean, that's up to you, right? I mean, you could have post-apocalyptic with dinosaur riders and, intelligent shades of the color blue, but that's entirely a taste thing for you. I will say, if you really like super gonzo games, hard to go wrong with Gamma World. Not that they ever made an updated version of it, but Gamma World 7th edition, which is basically 4th edition weird sci-fi, is pretty awesome, I think. Oh, how gonzo is too gonzo for you? It depends. More or less, the answer is it really depends. I love Star Trek. I'll tell you what I don't like. I don't like in between. I don't like in between. I like it to either be gonzo or serious. I don't like in between. What were we looking at that was post-apocalyptic Wilderfeast? Yeah, Wilderfeast, surprisingly, was post-apocalyptic. Yes, it was. Actually, I've been doing a lot of looking at Wilderfeast. Surprisingly, shockingly. And I may even have a secret committee that is put together to examine the possibility of using Wilderfeast for potential mega gamedom. Needless to say, I did buy the actual book. Rifts is very gonzo. Right, that's, a game needs to be internally consistent, Like, I am fine with having a game where, you know, a hobbit or a halfling is named, you know, dildo, you know, dildo bag nuts or something. But then I'm not going to take the game seriously, and I don't expect that the game, you know, should take itself seriously. You got it, OE. Well, the deal is, OE, we're in a very this is the real transitional time, OE, because Dragon Tide finished and Northern Reaches just finished last week. So we're doing our end of season strategy. But so right now there are no mega games. Up until this point, it was kind of mostly just shooting the shit, because I was not going to try to run a third or fourth mega game while our other two main mega games are going on. But now that we're in this sort of off season, and again, sometimes our off season depends on how much work needs to be done. And remember, I mean, for a lot of the players, this is a very it's a useful time of the year, time to sort of recharge, revitalize, you know, maybe not get as burned out, play some different games. So the last thing I want to do, plus we always try to change it up, right? Like when we start a new season, you know, you get a new character. It's the same world, but time may have passed. We evaluate mechanics. Long story short, it could sometimes take months and months until the thing kicks off. So you might not, you know, you might be looking at 3, 4, 5 months with no mega games. And for a lot of people, that's one of the reasons that they like being a member of the Knights of Last Call Discord. You know, that they're happy enough to give me money, but not really. What they're paying for is access to this community and all the resources therein. So now we kind of do have to get a bit serious about making sure that there are some mega games available. Now, historically, Pathfinder 2 has always had sort of an off-season game, because Pathfinder 2 is such a big part of our community. So we've had things like the Northman Challenge, and we've had things like Path Builder Extreme. I'm hearing rumors that there may be a Star Builder Extreme this winter and into spring. So we'll see about that. You have Wilder Feast. You haven't cracked it open yet. Worth a read. So here's the deal with it. I'm going to say this. Yes, no, yes, no. So I say yes because it is a bizarrely authentic game. If it was anything else, if they had... This game is so rooted in eating and cooking and food. If they had tried to even remotely make it like a D&D game, it would have just completely fallen flat, right? If it was D&D characters, right? Like normal D&D characters, but there was this big thing about food and eating monsters, falls flat for me instantaneously. But the game was so unapologetically, like, in this game, your players' weapons are like oven mitts, frying pan, butcher cleaver, like a spit, like a roasting spit. So, I mean, this game is so all in on its premise that I respect it. So it's yes from that perspective. So no, because it is unapologetically all in on this crazy concept of a world defined by food and hunger and cooking. So that's the yes. That's the no. Then the yes again, because the game actually has some surprisingly simple and easy to use mechanics that do seem to promote a very tied in reward structure, right? We always say the Jared Sorensen questions. What is the game? Is the game about something? Do the mechanics support that? And are you rewarded if you do that thing? And I would say that this game checks those 3 marks better than almost any other game that we've ever seen. Okay. But then there's the 4th step. And the 4th step, so that's a yes, right? The mechanics are great. The no, the final no, is the game is very procedural. It's procedural in the way that Torchbearer is procedural. It's procedural the way that Blades in the Dark is procedural. And there's many people who will criticize that. So some people will play a game like Blades in the Dark, which is a very procedural game, and they will say that was one of the craziest games we've ever seen. it was so awesome. The emerging stories were incredible. The depth of the storytelling, the emerging narrative, the collaborative nature of the game. It was some of the most feral, exciting, developed, gaming that I've ever seen. And then there are people who play Blades in the Dark and say it felt like a bad board game. So who is right? And I think it really just comes down to what is it? What do RPGs? What are they there for? What do they do for you? What do you expect a role-playing game to do for you? For me, most people, I would say, actually have no clue what they want a role-playing game for them to do. But again, for Wilder Feast, it is a procedural game, and I would fully expect that if you sat down and you played Wilder Feast and you just went through the mechanics and just went through the procedure, yes, it would be very, very boring. Okay, it would just be extremely boring. You would just be, it's kind of like, think about D&D, and imagine D&D in a game where a monster shows up and you move in and you just roll your d20 till you attack it till its hit points are at 0, and you just rinse and repeat that. Would that be boring? Absolutely, because it doesn't have any context, and the game itself isn't that good. Right? D&D isn't actually a good game on its own. Okay, like you wouldn't play D&D. Well, some people did, but you wouldn't play D&D bereft of anything else, right? The game itself isn't good enough to be played that way. And I would think the same thing is true of Blades in the Dark, and I think the same thing is true of Wilder Feast. What makes it exciting is adding the additional context of, what does this mean to the world? What does this mean to your character? How does your actions change and advance the world? So, well, that's my point. Combat in D&D is boring. Again, this gets back to like the mouse guard thing, right? In mouse guard, we learn that, I gotta find it, but we learn that it matters not what you fight. I think it's there somewhere. I thought I had that. There's a piece of art with it. I could be wrong. Yeah, okay. So there, inscribed in the stone wall, okay, above the exit of Lockhaven, which is the fortress city of the Mouse Guard, right? It matters not what you fight, but what you fight for. So Mouse Guard basically takes the premise of, it doesn't really matter, like our combat. Yeah, like the combat in Mouse Guard is not, I guess, as cool as D&D or Pathfinder 2, if those things are even cool. But what Mouse Guard chooses to say, it says, okay, yeah, combat itself, but combat doesn't, the actual game of combat doesn't have to be that exciting if what you're fighting for is important and matters and you care about it. And it's not like what you're fighting and what feats you took, but why are you fighting? And what will happen if you win? And what will happen if you lose? And regardless of whether you win or lose, how does this change you? How does this change the world? How does this change your character? So. Sorry, there's a lot of chat. I'm just going off here. Beowulf says, I hate everything you're saying. I imagine, this was when we were talking about Wilder Feast. Okay. Everything. Yeah, Beowulf, this is the most anti-Beowulf game I could ever possibly imagine. Whereas Pumpkin says, the procedural system is the biggest selling point for me. I love Forged in the Dark games. Exactly. We're committing to the bit, and we're all in. We're all in. Blades in the Dark is probably my all-time favorite RPG, and it's probably the all-time best game I've ever played. It's not even my favorite TTRPG. So this is exactly, I would say the same thing is true for me in the sense that, or rather I used to say, or I still say, Blades in the Dark for me is the easiest, most seamless, most compatible game for me to run as a game master. It is not my favorite TTRPG, but it is the game that is the easiest, is the most in line and in sync with the way that I game master and the way that I want to game master, for sure. Aaron says, I am running concurrent 5e and Daggerheart games, and I absolutely dread combat in my 5e game. Well, Daggerheart is a blast. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with enjoying D&D. I mean, that people have been doing that for 50 years, at least the last 30 since or 25 since 3rd edition came out. I think 5e D&D is very similar. 5e D&D combat in my mind is very similar to 3rd edition style combat. Oh yeah, people who say that D&D combat is solved by PF2 combat, I go, I'm not. But also too, remember, like I've said this before, I am polygamerous, and so I have always played a lot of board games, but I've also played a lot of tabletop miniatures games. Not recently, but like games like Warhammer, Mordheim, Kings of War, War Machine, etc., etc. And those, to me, are far more interesting games in and of themselves. And the biggest reason is because when I sit down across the table to play somebody in a game of Mordheim, which is a fantasy skirmish game that Games Workshop came out with 20 years ago, it's 50-50. It's not like it's not like I'm going to win the game, automatically because I'm the protagonist. No, we're both sitting down to play a game. We both have equal chances of winning. So smart strategy in building my list, good tactics while playing the game, a little bit of luck on my side. Those are going to be the deciding factors about who wins or who loses. It's it's hard for me to take D&D or Pathfinder 2 combat seriously because of how skewed it is in the player's favor. So, yeah, that's what it really comes down to. No, I think most hardcore D&D people have probably played almost nothing else Gridlock. I think that's true. Now, it is true, I prefer PF2 to 5e. That is true. But I mean, I'm not like jumping over the moon to play either of them right now. Yeah, Tom. I think that's correct. At the end of the day, PF2 is still functionally an F20 style game, right? It's a fantasy 20 game. Now, Draw Steel obviously has a lot more, bells and whistles, and a lot more tactical choices. And so for some people, the problem with, say, D&D is that they just don't have enough buttons to push. Draw Steel definitely gives you enough buttons to push. I'll say that. G Helmet says, I am playing 2 D&D games right now, and it's because it's the easy to go game for people who I can play with right now. I wish I could play more. Yeah, and I think for a lot of people that is true. My experience in this space for the last 5 years, most of the people who are here are game masters. Game masters tend to be more engaged with their hobby than other players, so they are the ones who are most likely to say, come across a channel like, say, Knights of Last Call and be like, oh, look at these other games. Wow, this is really interesting. And they're the ones who tend to be like, oh, I'd love to be able to play X, Y, or Z, but my players aren't interested, Well, so that's a whole separate point, Pumpkin, which is when I play Pathfinder 2, I respect the game. It's well written and well conceived. And because I respect the game, it also means that I follow the rules fairly rigidly. In D&D, I don't. Mostly because I don't actually know them, and I never bothered to learn them. So that helped. Combat in our Forbidden Lands games, I think it alternated. I think people liked it, and then I don't know. I think some of my group really liked it, and I think some of my group really hated it. So I think it depends. No, I have not seen that. Right, Root and Root RPGs. Although, if you play the Root RPG, you can definitely see the DNA of the Vagabond experience, right, from the Root board game in the way that the play pattern of the game plays out. So they are trying to do something. Tom Crow says, me, I'm a button pusher. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, MMOs are popular for a reason. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Is there enough of an audience for Wilderfeast to support a mega game, though? Absolutely not, but that doesn't really matter. I mean, Clouds to Roll, normally we wouldn't be running anything. So that's why I said these are off times. Also, too, it all depends on what you're, I mean, it's all about expectation setting. Now, unfortunately, and this is one of the reasons I am very protective of my customers, and by that I mean my patrons, right? The people who choose to donate and become part of my Patreon. Now, some people, they become part of my Patreon because they want to support this content and they understand that I don't make a lot of money off of YouTube, hundreds of dollars a month total, and so they say, "Hey, I support this content and I would like to support you." Awesome. But there are people, and I don't think there's anything wrong with this. There are people who, Helmets, thank you for tonight's talk. Good night, I am out. Well, thank you so much for the super chat on your way out. I'm glad you stopped by. I hope you catch up with us in the future. Thank you for stopping by, Helmet. But there are people who join our Patreon specifically because they hear about these mega games, which we talk about. You could argue we advertise them. And they join because they're expecting that they're going to be able to play something like Pathfinder 2 or Dragonbane, if you will, on tap. And I think a lot of people do join our mega games because they really like Pathfinder 2 or they really like Dragonbane. And they basically hear from, or maybe they interpret this as there's going to be thousands of games. There's going to be hundreds of games a week. And I'm going to be able to play as much Pathfinder 2 as I want. And, I wish that was true. Now, earlier this season, for several months in a row, we were running 35 Pathfinder 2 games a week in Northern Reaches. Now, that is a lot. I mean, especially for a community our size. And I generally would hope and think that most people were able to get their fill. But as with all things, things happen. People get burned out, especially when they're playing 35 games a week. People get burned out, maybe the bloom falls off the rose, and eventually that sort of does die down. It almost always dies down by the end of a season. People get burned out. It is just one thing. In fact, one of the main things that we are discussing right now between both our Northern Reaches Pathfinder 2 mega game and our Dragontide Dragonbane mega game is maybe we should really shorten these seasons. There's some people who go, no, it needs to be 8 months or 9 months or 10 months so that we can definitely go from 1 to 20. But our experience has shown us that only the most hardcore, super dedicated players and GMs are really bought in for that. Anyways, long story short, I think it's about expectation setting. And so when somebody signs up for my Patreon because they want to, say, play in a mega game. Now, I'm actually going somewhere with this. Because they're like, I love that game and I want to be able to play that game. And so when they come in and they join a mega game, maybe that mega game only has like 20 people. And that instead of 35 games a week, what if that game only has 3 or 4? And you go, well, none of the games worked for my schedule. Right? That's, for me, that's the fear. And I'm saying that I'm not even playing the game. That's the fear for me as the Patreon, owner, because I feel like I have disappointed that patron, that customer. They came, they're paying their, $10 a month so that they can play infinite Wilderfeast, and they join, and there's a community of 25 people, maybe 20 people who are trying to play Wilderfeast, and there's like 4 or 5 people running games of that 20. Pretty good. 25% are running games. And maybe they ran games and you were only free, Wednesdays and Saturdays, and no one ran a game on Wednesdays or Saturdays. And you're kind of like, dang, Now, some of the problem is, I have said this before, but mostly this is said by Bob, and it's mostly said by my community, which is people go, you have no idea the kind of value you are getting for your dollar here. If you go on to start playing, you might pay $20, $30, or $40 a session to play with a GM for a sort of, buy game. There are literally people who pay $10 a month to play in our mega games. And I've been told, and I believe, you could argue it's anecdotal, but we do have hundreds and hundreds of patrons. And over the course of 4 or 5 years, we've had over 1,000 patrons, right? Some people have obviously come and gone, who have said that, number one, because of the nature of our community and the way and the audience that I'm talking to, people like you, the quality of player and the quality of GM is much higher in Knights of Last Call. Okay. I mean, look, I'm not going to try to blow smoke up your ass, but the fact is that the fact that you watch this channel probably suggests that you are in the upper echelon of game masters. Okay. Because it means you're thinking about games differently. You're engaging with games differently. So there's that. You're being exposed to different ideas and philosophies of gaming. So number two is, believe it or not, having skin in the game makes a big difference to people's attitude. If you go to one of these Discords where they, have mega games and it's all just free and people can join and do whatever, you see stuff like, 30-to-1 player to GM ratios. I'm sure you get a lot of trolls. You probably get a lot of terrible, horrible people. It may seem crazy, but just asking people to put $10 down a month has done an incredible job of pretty much completely ridding our entire Discord of terrible people. People get into, we get into disagreements and stuff like that. And there have been a couple people that, we've had talks with, but I think in the entire history of our entire channel, we've only banned 2 people. So, we have a banning rate of, 0.02% or something like that. It's crazy. So that means that, we get pretty good people here. And so I really want to make sure that those people are having a great time. And when they join, because they're expecting to play all the time, for $10 a month, and then they don't, I feel bad. But again, other people like, my own patrons will go, you have no idea the kind of value you're getting. There are people who literally will play with what they consider to be top tier GMs. I mean, we've had people who have come who, they only play online. None of their friends really play RPGs or whatever. And they were engaging with these online GMs, these paid GMs. They've been on the big public Discord servers. They've also paid the $30 or $40 a session, where they're paying, $160 a month to play 4 times, right? Once a week. And they have come and they have said, and again, this is all anecdotal, but we have a large enough sample size. I feel like there's some truth to it. And they said, not just one GM, but by and large, most of the GMs I have games with on Knights of Last Call were better than maybe all but one of the people I've ever paid for as a GM. And that's over numerous GMs. So when you have somebody who's playing with what we consider to be a top tier GM, and they might be playing 2 or 3 times a week, so they're playing 12 times a month, and they're paying $10, they're paying $1 a game. And that's technically on top of all the other benefits you get, right? Which is, access to the chat channels and private Discord with me, if that's worth anything to you. I don't know that it is. So I try not to beat myself up too much about it, but yeah. Anyways, a long rant about mega games. But the point is, we are discussing about maybe making it shorter. And there's some people who really want it to be longer, and there's other people who really want it to be shorter. So I don't know. Just trying to catch up here with chat here. Oh, there's a lot of chat. Yeah, so Tasty Trekkie says, you say polygamous. I'm a proud game slut. I'll roll my dice for at least anything once. That's Bob. Bob right now is in his game slut phase, which I respect. He's only been in the hobby for well, basically as long as Knight's Last Call has existed, right? Bob's first game was with me. Basically, you saw it online. I mean, we played like a very short 5e campaign before we started, but Rise of the Rune Lords was Bob's first real D&D campaign. So that was 5 years ago. We just did our 5-year anniversary. So for me, Bob is in that phase where, he spent his whole life, right? He dating this, he met this girl in middle school. He dated her in high school. They went to college, but they rode each other every day. And then after college, one day, as college is wrapping up and he's thinking about proposing, he gets the message that, she's moving to Europe with Francois, and Bob is broken, right? Because all he's ever known is this. And so now then he discovers the whole world of like dating. And now he's like, I want to try everything that is there out there. That's what Bob is with TTRPGs. Bob spent his entire life, never playing TTRPGs. And then he finally discovered TTRPGs and he played PF2. And then we were like, okay, well, this is over. He's like, oh, there's other TTRPGs. I want to taste them all. And so Bob is definitely in his sleuth phase. I respect it. I have been there and done that. I'm a little bit more reserved in what games I'll take home or not, So it's like so Bob's like Zen Bullet here. I want to play as many games as possible. That's a frequent occurrence for me, Jess. At almost any con is somebody will start to give me a pitch and I'll be like, not only do I own your game, but I've also covered it on my YouTube channel. And then my favorite response is always, really? Who are you? Because they didn't know. And I didn't tell them. Let's see here. Yeah, Outercraft. I can respect that. And that's one of the reasons I respect Draw Steel. It is very clearly about what it's about, and I respect that. You want to take it a step further, think of a game like Panic at the Dojo. Panic at the Dojo is unabashedly all about its combat system, to the point where after you have a combat, the game basically says, talk for a little while, roll a dice, but it doesn't really matter because we're just trying to get back to the fight, the next fight. And I respect that because that's awesome. This correct. Do not fall for the Stormwind fallacy, right? Just because a character is strong doesn't mean it can't be role played. They are not exclusive at all. Yeah, I mean, I think 10 to 15 sessions is pretty good. I mean, I don't really want to go shorter than that. Bob is in his 1-shot, 2-shot, 3-shot era, where he's just like, oh, this is an A1 Wagyu steak, it's like Bob's like, all right, next. And it's like McDonald's hamburger. And he's like, yeah, let's keep it going. And Bob doesn't care. Is Bob getting thrown under the bus? No. Bob would be the first people to tell you this. I love Bob. His enthusiasm is infectious. Probably more than half the reason I've stayed with this channel. Well, I'm glad to see it. Yeah, because that's the thing, too, by the way. The $10 a month is just to play in those 2 specific mega games. If you just join at our $5 level, you could play. There's dozens of other community games run by, just a single GM, like a normal TTRPG. They're not all just. We're not just the mega games. We have a whole gamut of things. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good 16 to 20 sessions a year, I think, is realistic for, grown-ups. Dr. D Hart is polygamorous as well. So this is interesting because Beowulf says, I was writing out what games I want to play, setting genre-wise, and there's at least 13 different games I will at least, but system-wise, I want to play fewer and fewer. And it's interesting that you say that because for me, number one, system is setting. So when you talk about the two difference, I think there is no difference. But also outside of that, I want a system that supports that setting, and I'm more interested in the system than I am in the setting / the game. Right? Again, I would rather engage with the role-playing game than engage with, the characters and the story. Which is one of the reasons one-shots don't interest me at all, because I'm here to experience the game system, right? And I'm here to, really get that get to see how all the pieces work together and how it all works together. And that is how it begins, King Hodop. That is how it begins. When you start trying to make your mystical, magical unicorn. But I also respect the fact that not everyone has had the sort of length and breadth of role-playing games that I had. I started playing RPGs, basically 1990 as a kid, playing D&D in various forms of D&D. But by 95, 96, we had started to explore, Marvel superheroes and Earth Dawn and, some of the World of Darkness games and the Dragonlance Saga system, which used cards, and a handful of other games. And so, again, by the time 3rd edition came out, we had already played, 8, 9, 10 different systems. So, and then of course we were going to Gen Con every year and Origins every year, and we were just 20. So I was exposed very early to, what became Powered by the Apocalypse and some of those things. So for me, it's a lot more. I certainly respect people being kind of like wanting to drink from the fire hose, right? And being like, hey, I really want to get all that this has to offer, this hobby, for sure. 15 to 20 sessions, you could never live like that. What does that mean? Like, that's too many? Now, if you say that that's too few, King Hodop, spoken like a true 19-year-old or whatever. Oh, you're saying it's too few. Yes. Okay. Spoken like a true 19-year-old. I'll say that. Yeah, I mean, hopefully you can find something that works for you. That'd be awesome. Yes, you are. But also, like, when you're that age, things are a lot easier. So I'll just say that. You definitely don't have kids yet, so there's that. Right. So one shots don't interest you for the other reason, right? Both of us are looking to explore and deep dive into the particulars of what it is that interests us, and one shots don't afford us that time. Yeah, I mean, Dr. Waits. I mean, along with like Ben. I mean, Ben's a machine. He's a dad. He's a professional. He's got a million different hobbies, some of which he feels like he's more passionate about than TTRPGs. And yet somehow that guy runs like 150 games sessions a year. And that was, quote, a light year. It's crazy. I don't know how. I mean, I don't think I could do it. Shout out Earth Dawn. You play 3 sessions a week. Wow, good for you. I mean, again, one of the things about role-playing games is just figuring out what motivates you about them and what engages, what do you engage with? So I think that's cool that you know that. You're at 5 sessions a week right now, you monster. Oh, 2 on one day? Brutal. Face Rip Baby? Yeah. That was actually technically my like second RPG. Oh, very cool. Open table OSE, West Marches style game. Very cool, Joey. That's sweet. That's awesome. There is a new bookshop that just opened up down the street for me. Like literally less than, I don't know, less than, I don't even know, less than 3 minutes. And I haven't been in there yet, but it's called the Viridian Bookshop. Apparently they have some t-shirt options, but it's a bookstore about like fantasy, like, fantasy and, curated fiction books. So it's high fantasy, science fiction, horror, historical fiction, romance, adventure, right? And it's kind of, they got a lot of signed editions and collectible editions. I really want to go in there and see if I've never owned a really nice copy of Lord of the Rings. And so I've been thinking about that, but they talk about that they have tabletop role-playing RPG nights, board game nights, dedicated game rooms. And I don't even remotely have the time for it, but it'd be kind of cool to go in there and see maybe about doing something, community but focused like that. I mean, obviously I would do that for my patrons rather than doing it for a bunch of people in person, but I just want to check it out. Like if I had the time and the inclination, I would do that. No, Ben is definitely not human. He is something more. What is Earth Dawn? Earth Dawn is an RPG that has been owned by several different companies. It is in its 4th edition. It came out in 1992-ish originally. It's a fairly trad RPG where you roll dice and try to get a high number, but it's a game where the mechanics of the game are very similar. Are very aligned with the fiction of the world. In other words, like when you go and do cool shit and become more legendary, aka you become higher level, that is literally a thing in the game. Like as your character becomes more legendary, the pattern of your character and the sort of the mystical, fate weaving of your character literally becomes stronger because you become more important. And that's what allows you to become stronger. So it's like leveling up is literally a thing that you could talk about in the game, basically. I mean, Danger Patrol is kind of designed to be a one-shot, I think, really. Well, those are all really good games. One Ring, Mythic Bastionland, and Pendragon. I'm noticing a theme. There. Low magic, kind of gritty in that way. Legends of the Mist impressed me, and I thought that was really cool. That's saying something. I really thought it was really cool. Oh, yeah. When I was in my teens and when I was in college, and even when I got first out of college and we were all living in the same apartment building and no one was married or really had a serious girlfriend or anything like that at the time, we'd game Friday night and Saturday night. And like we'd start at like 5 or 6 and we'd go to like 2 or 3 in the morning. So it's like, 10-hour session on Friday, then a 10-hour session on Saturday. Oh, and then some of the people would come over on Wednesday. Back then we only had one rule. We never gamed on Sunday. That was like our day off. Like we might get together on a Monday or Tuesday, usually not Thursday because we knew we were coming into that big weekend, rush. But there were times where we definitely gamed 30 plus hours a week. It was awesome. The same campaign. Zipper Fist, can't wait to see Daggerheart win this. Well, thank you for putting this over. So we will do our end of the year TTRPG rankings. Now, originally, I was thinking of either looking at Well, we'll do some things. We'll do like I think we'll do some different categories. I think that'll be good. The thing is, I kind of want to just focus like an award show on just either the games that just came out this year or just the games that I looked at this year. So there may have been games I looked at this year that came out a couple years ago. So I don't know. We'll have to ask the patrons what they think about that, which one they would prefer to see. But we could do like best art and best rule set and best design and all that other stuff. Yeah, that's you finished 3 PF2E campaigns this year that ran 2 to 3 years each. You're finished with PF2 for a while. Yes. The 90s. Yes. It's like we have the Reachies. the golden reach around. You remember that's the official name of the prize, by the way. I don't know if you remember that, Pumpkin, but it is the golden reach around. Yeah, that's probably true. Although I do love the art in Mythic Bastionland, so there is that. Oh, fun times. It's interesting. I'm interested in seeing what the feedback is for Northern Reaches Season 3 because I was very much not involved this year. So I will say the one problem that we are having, I kind of talked about this a little bit the other day, is we have both of our surveys out right now for Dragon Tide and for Northern Reaches. One's for Pathfinder 2, a fairly complex game, and one's for Dragon Bane, a dead simple game. And there's a lot of feedback from all of the games that basically says it's too much tracking, it's too much work to get all the information in the game. And I'm kind of like scratching my head because I'm like, it's kind of tough because like I don't know what else we're supposed to do. And part of the problem is that because if you're playing, let's say in Foundry or in person, you have your character sheet and that's it. But because we're playing online and because we have to like shift servers, sometimes you have to transfer your character from one server to another one, or when you update your character, because it's kind of an honor system, I don't know what your GMs do, but I never care if my players take their sheet home, but in theory, at least I played with them. So, if they come back the next session and they're like, oh yeah, I have a nuclear descender, I have a thermo detonator. I'm like, where'd you get that from? I didn't give you that. But in a game like Northern Reaches, if somebody has a thermo detonator, maybe the last GM gave that to them. They don't know. And so, because we work on an honor system, the very least what we do is have a lot of tracking and writing it down. So there's sort of you have the receipts, basically. You have a paper trail. And I guess people are just getting bored with that or sick of that. I don't know what the solution is, but there is that. Don't know what the solution is for that. Of course you did. Karma gave some people thermal detonators. I'll tell you one thing, buddy. I think Starfinder's days are dead. I'll tell you that. I think that's... yeah, sure. Necklace of Fireballs is a classic item. What's your favorite game you reviewed this year, Derek? Well, King Hold Up, you have to turn into the 90s and find out. We got our goal. I can't spoil it now. I got to have the people propose it, and then we'll go for it. I mean, I would say that the top candidates are probably Daggerheart, Mythic Bastionland, The One Ring, Draw Steel. Believe it or not, maybe Wilderfeast, just because even though the premise is completely absurd, I thought Grimwild was really good. There were a couple games that really surprised me. You could even maybe put Starfinder Second Edition, even though it's not really a game because the game is just the Paizo engine. No, nothing revolutionary there, but I did think the class design was really good. Yes, nested immunities. Nested stats, nested stuff. It's just, Is it possible to streamline tracking in a way similar to MMOs? I don't know what I'm saying, to be honest. Well, apparently, the way that the really cool 5e people do it is by having an incredible bot. And what I can only imagine, either somebody who's really bored and really spent a ton of time on, or just the power of 5e, or they spent an ungodly amount of money. But somebody was showing me the bot from this. I think it was like a 5e West Marches server that has like 500 plus players in it, which is crazy. And obviously at that scale, I mean, how else would you track it? But anyways, this bot was crazy. It was crazy how integrated it was and how automated it was. And, I was pretty jealous. Now, there was a time where Edril, I think, who does web design and programming, I think he was underemployed or unemployed. Maybe he still is. I don't know. And he was talking about, like, maybe if I get bored enough looking for jobs, I'm just going to like go and create like a full front end / back end solution for like managing. In this case, would have been Dragon Tide. That would be awesome. I would love it if we had like a comp con for, that's a web thing for Lancer. If we had that for our we had a database backend with a solid UI front end, that'd be awesome. But yeah. Yeah, the MechWarrior Destiny was a cool game, and it actually was kind of fun. Trespasser was this year. Sparks and Shadows was one of the most, like, now if you had now Trespasser might not win best game of the year for me, but if you had like best subsystem or best new mechanic or something like that, Sparks and Shadows, that could definitely have a shot at winning here. What do you mean by manage here? We technically have a website, but I mean, having a website is a lot different than having a very, very complex, integrated UI, user experience, for managing your virtual roster of characters, So what do I mean by manage here? I mean a lot of things. I mean, keeping track of what your character has and who gave it to you. I mean, for most of these games, there's like a sort of a downtime system where you can take actions asynchronously outside of a managed game session. So it's for tracking that. If the game has auxiliary resources, which oftentimes they do, because we want to use these resources. At least this was my idea in Dragon Tide, but we'll see how successful it was. Actually, let's see how successful it was. How about we find this out together? I know people hate most of what I do, but maybe they didn't hate this. We'll see. We got 21 responses. That's pretty good. Okay, well, that's not too bad. All right, so what we got here. So the question was, so this is my crafting system that obviously is fairly hated. I mean, not hated, but I mean, if we use like an NPS score, and let's be generous here, well, let's call 4s and 5s promoters, right? So we'll call 4s and 5s promoters. We'll call those +1s. And then 3s are neutrals. Those are 0s. And 1 or 2s we'll call detractors. So that's -1. So we have -8 +0 +5. So that's a net promoter score of -3. That's pretty bad. Amongst 20 responses. So that's a really bad detractor rate. So people did not like the crafting system. Fair enough. We'll kill it. So there's that. And then this is for Dragon Tide, by the way, the Dragon Pit game. So here's our resource game. All right. So this is better, right? Because we're +13 -2. So this is a +11 on 21 responses. Much better. So actually people didn't hate it as much as I thought, which is good. And I thought people would hate this, but this seems to be fairly well liked, sort of. 12 minus 3, so plus 9. Yeah, this is just a stream with random numbers. Ooh, that's not good. Anyways. But there was actually, there was a main reason that we came to this. Yeah. So the question, how difficult or easy was it to log your character data? Like, there are some people who said it was very easy, but there's enough people who say it's negative, and there's a lot of people who said it was 3. So it's a little tough. What do you mean, anyways? I was invested in seeing you analyze the data. Yeah, so the premise with Dragontide was that what I tried to do was I tried to detach and it didn't work that well because I don't think we gave her good enough advice. I don't know. I think I'm still torn. There's a lot of thoughts going through my head, but so one of the problems is how do you make the players feel like they're the ones driving the action, and how do you make players feel like they're the ones who are really putting it forward? So like, do I have? We need a full data analysis stream. Let's see here. So okay, I don't know. We may end up whiteboarding here. Yeah, there's an NR season 3. It's still up, Zetrum. It's still up. We shouted out on the Discord. We shouted out the NR channels, and we shouted out in the announcement channel. So there is an exit poll. I think the NR has like 40 or 50 responses, so obviously a much higher response rate. But I didn't actually create that poll, so I don't have access to it. I can look at it when members of the NR Council share it. But anyways, one of the core problems that we've always had is how do we make the community feel like their actions tie together? Because a lot of West Marches, and again, I hesitate to call our game a West March because it's multiple GMs and this whole thing. But one of the things is that a lot of people run these games and they end up running their own little story. Often this corner of the world, and it doesn't really tie in as much as other things do. And it's because, it's hard enough to create an adventure on your own, let alone one that, is tying into other people and, paying it. Now I have to pay attention to what other people are doing and all this other problems. Now, King Hodop says, and King Hodop, by the way, came to us as a very top tier, active member from the DC-20's West Marches game. And so not only was really huge in the DC-20 community, but really big in their ongoing, basically their mega game. And he's saying that was the problem they kept having. Nothing was tied to the broader world. Now, so what I was going to get at is what we discovered is what the people who were running the game could create these sort of events. And we would say things like, do the demons, conquer, the Starlands? Do the armies of the orcs overthrow the Broken Lands? And we could make a clock. And what we would do, this is early on, is the GMs would run an adventure set in the Broken Lands. And then the players would go there ostensibly towards, let's say, fighting the orcs off. And then at the end of that session, the GM would submit a proposal to the overlords, the people who run the campaign, and basically say, all right, maybe we do need to whiteboard this. Let's see if I have battery. That'll determine if we have maybe not. I sort of have battery. I'm not sure. 1 second. can actually, do we have something that we can use to charge this thing? Yes, we do. Okay. Hey, what's up, Keith? Sorry, it's been a while since I've whiteboarded. It's been a real long time, actually. All right. Now we're cooking. All righty. All right, there we go. Ooh, IPAs are nice. Man, it's fun. Unfortunately, Puppy says, "Man, really wish we could have just had Evil win in season 1 and just nuke Northport. That would be nice." Let's change this to. There we go. All right. So, what I was trying to say was that. What I was trying to say here was that. What the original problem was is that you had GMs. Oh, this is really. I got to change my tablet properties. This is crazy. It's been a long time since I've. This might be the first time we've whiteboarded with this new setup. Oh my, yes. Okay. I'm gonna change this big time. Okay, there we go. All right, there we go. Okay. Okay, so the original problem that we had is that you had basically you had a bunch of different GMs. Okay, so GM1, GM2, GM3, and they would run a series of sessions. Okay, and as a result of that, running those sessions, they would basically kind of advance the story of their vertical, but the lines between these GMs were fairly, opaque, and there wasn't a lot of overlap. So we decided that we would create this system whereby we, the overlords, we would take a sort of fiction first, but also sort of narrative first, in the sense that we would be like, well, what would be cool? What would make sense? What flows from the fiction, but also, like what would be fun? What would be neat? And as overlords, we would announce these new events or these new clocks. So we would say something like,
Thaddeus tipped $40, best late night background listen. And I guess the RPG content is pretty good.
Thaddeus, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much for that. Hey, listen, a good listen is important. Put it on, let's chill back, chill out. I mean, that's what I'm here for. Again, I was messing with my lights. I'm still not 100% sure I'm dialed in here. Hold on a sec. Let me dial that down a little bit. Let's try 11%. I don't know. Still got to see, because that's 100%. I think we can all agree that's too much. All right, we'll try 16. 13? I'm being too pedantic right now. Okay, sorry. Getting really distracted. Thank you, Thaddeus. That's correct, Keith. It's like an MMO. In fact, Keith, what we used to call it was we used to call it a MMOVTTRPG, right? We would call it a massively multiplayer online virtual tabletop role-playing games. That's what we would call it. So Karma says, I keep trying to have evil win, but the council keeps stopping me. So we would create this clock, which was like, the orcs conquer the broken lands. And we were very much inspired by Blaze in the Dark here. And so the idea was that, that if this clock filled up, that the orcs would conquer the broken lands. And that could have serious repercussions, not just for the narrative, but potentially even for the mechanics of the game. And so usually there would either be some sort of tug of war clock, or there would be something else that might say the orcs, are defeated or something like that. Like, let's just say there's another clock. And so this is kind of a racing clock situation, right? Which is like, which of these clocks can fill up first? If the orcs are defeated, clock fills up first, then obviously the orcs are defeated. If the orcs conquer the broken lands, then fills up first, then that's completed. And so what would end up happening is, because these were clocks, for starters, the number of segments in the clocks were pretty small, right? We're talking about, 6 to 12 segments. And so adding one segment was a pretty big deal, especially when you're talking about a campaign with, dozens and dozens of players. And so the idea was that we would have a couple of these events running. And so we would try to have this, we would try to do this to sort of have the GMs break out of their silos. And you're going to have to apologize to me, or I'm going to have to apologize to you guys. I'm going to have to switch microphones because it's too hard to use my stylus when I have this big microphone in my hand. But okay, check. 1 2, check 1 2, check 1 niner. All right, there we go. Okay. Oh no, we're not good there. What's happening? Why isn't that? Hold on a second. Speaker output. Rodecaster Pro speaker. All right. So as I was saying, the point was to break down these silos. And now what we were going to try to encourage is that the GM, and this is where the problem came in, right? Is that this GM would say, hey, I don't want the orcs to conquer, the Bloodlands. So I am going, oh goodness, what is going on? I must have Windows ink on. I tell you, people, it is always quite the journey to get these things to work. Oh goodness, where is? I don't know where Windows Ink is. All right. Oh goodness, you stupid thing. Okay. Sorry. So yeah, so the idea was to try to get this GM to say, hey, I want to
I want to. I want the orcs to not conquer. So I'm going to run a session that'll be about fighting the orcs. Okay, and instead of doing my own thing, I'm going to try to maybe I still create a little bit of a story or a little bit of an adventure that may have multiple sessions, but I'm going to focus on a storyline about raiding orcish caravans or engaging sneaking into the orcish supply lines or something like that, right? And the idea was that a bunch of GMs would all interact with this orcs are defeated clock, and they would run that game. And to be clear, sometimes the GMs were motivated to run these type of adventures by the players who would say, hey, I really want to go deal with these orcs. Can a GM run an orc game? Which is fine. But, fundamentally, that may not have been what the GM was doing. But we had really great GMs who were really motivated to help the players. But the most important part about this was, after the session was done, the GM would submit what we called an AAR. It's an after-action report, and they would submit this to the overlords, okay? That was like the people who were not playing the game at all, that we were just administrating it. That was like me and Bob, and now it's like the GM council. And they would basically make it a proposal, and they would say, the players did X, Y, and Z, and that's why I think there should be, 2 ticks filled into the clock. And and the problem was, a lot of times, we, the overlords, would disagree. We would say, what was your session? You didn't even do anything. Like they talked to some orcs. But part of the problem with that is just this understanding that ticking, this thing's only an 8 clock. If you tick this thing twice, it's a tremendous amount of filling this thing in. Okay. It's very much like TPS reports, okay? But the other problem is, on one hand, the GMs are naturally going to be a little bit, they're going to say, hey, I want to tick this thing. And then if we say, no, it's not worth 2 ticks, it's only worth 1 tick, or maybe we might even say it's only worth 0 ticks. So then people feel very, disappointed. The second thing is there's a bias. Now, see, I'm showing here something that very clearly, probably, presumably, nobody wants to have happen, right? Nobody wants the orcs to conquer the Broken Lands. Presumably. But let's say that these clocks were a little bit different, okay? Maybe the clocks were like, for example, do we start mining? Do we start mining the harvesting the jagged pine forest for extra lumber, which might give this town more resources and give us better docks, which allow us access to better items? Or do we support the circle of druids that lives within the forest and don't want us to be harvesting it? And instead, if we can help them sanctify the forests, that they will give everybody druidic powers because they will have blessed the forest. Okay, so now you have competing conflicts of interest. And a GM, not the players, the GM is the one who's controlling this. Because if a GM really doesn't, for whatever reason, let's say the GM really wants the orcs to be defeated, okay, for their own personal reasons, maybe because they're a player, maybe because they like the idea of the orcs being defeated, they might only run sessions that are tied to defeating the orcs. And so even if for some reason you as a player were like, hey, I kind of want to support the orcs, I think that they have a right to their ancestral lands, I think it's wrong that we drove them out of their ancestral homelands, maybe you turn it into this sort of like colonial oppressor thing. Well, if no GM is running that kind of event, then you as a player can't tick that clock because you always had to go through a GM, right? So that was kind of the problem, I think, with clocks. So I'm very inspired. I love Shadows over Camelot. I think that's a great game. For sure. So then, things kind of changed a little bit. Not saying like a lot of bit, but like in some of the more recent seasons, they kind of changed it so that now players or your PC, okay, that you have these downtime actions in town that you can then spend to influence a clock, which is a fine idea, but it now kind of divorces the play from the session. And I kind of try to take this to another level with Dragontide, because what I try to do with Dragontide is I wanted the players to be responsible for what they cared about. And so what I asked is that the GM would run a session. And they would run a session, and they could do whatever they want to do in that session. They could tell their own story on their own island. They could have their own whole little meta plot. They could have an adventure path on their island. They could run it like a hex crawl. They could do whatever they want to do on their island. But the key thing is that what that session would reward would be sort of fungible meta resources that the players could then choose where to spend those resources to influence the things that they cared about the most. Okay? So in other words, the GM was just awarding, well, I mean, in a way, it's kind of like cash, right? You go to work and you do what your boss tells you to do, and they give you money. And money is just this super generic resource that then you decide how you want to spend it. Okay. Think of this as a difference from like, your boss paying you in food or goods or like in company script, right? So I wanted to kind of create a more neutral resource, because then the players, not the GM, the players would then be able to go directly to the clocks or the events that they cared about. And they could spend their hard-earned currency and directly influence the events or the things that they care about. And they don't have to worry if the GM is running a thing. So put it another way, back in our first example, maybe GM2 runs an adventure about, sea pirates, which has absolutely nothing to do with the orcs of the Broken Lands. But at the end of that adventure, okay, they award you with generic meta currency, okay, hero points or, adventure points or something like that. And they give that to you, and they award you with 10 generic meta currency points. And you know that in order to defeat the orcs, okay, the entire community, so we get rid of the clock, and we say to defeat the orcs, the community has to contribute 250 adventure points. And so you go and you fight the sea pirates, and you are awarded 10 generic meta currency points, and you decide to come over and contribute it to this event, okay? Meanwhile, another player who was on the same adventure with you, who got the same 10 generic meta currency points for fighting the sea pirates, okay, they could go put those 10 points somewhere completely different. So the idea is that now the players have this ability to influence the events that they want to do. Okay, but this is great, right? Except it's not, because now the GMs are basically back in their silos. How many points do you need to, right? So for example, the orcs conquer the Broken Lands, right? That might be 0 of 150. And then your fellow player, you're playing with Karama, and Karama gets his 10 points, and Karama goes and puts it right into this one, right? And so now the problem is that because the problem, Tom, is that this method really relied on a lot of pressure and influence from the top. Okay, and it relied on basically me, the overlord, or Bob or Smith, the overlords, or the GM council, kind of basically saying, this is what's up. This is what you have to work on. And then saying, hey, go and deal with that. And to be clear, I mean, I kind of did that with Dragontide as well. But people, I just don't think that they engaged with it as much as they did in prior games. So, we this is one of the reasons. Long story short, we don't have a good solution to this event yet, or to this problem. And how do we get people, because fundamentally we have two main problems. I'll say this: two main problems. One, it sounds like I'm bitching about it. I'm not. I'll say 95% of GMs are also players. So we don't make a distinction. Like if you run games, you can still be a player, and that just simply means that, to quote Sean Connery from the movie Entrapment with Catherine Zeta-Jones, you're playing both sides. So they some GMs might be influenced. It's not necessarily nefarious. They just like what they like. And so the type of games and the type of rewards that a GM gives can be very, very biased. Okay, so that's number one problem. Number two, I can't force someone to GM. Which is to say, if I go, no, the events are about the orcs, and I want the community games to all be about the orcs, and a player goes, or a GM goes, I don't like running orc adventures. I don't like running combat heavy adventures. I'd much rather have an adventure where the players go and talk with the orcs and negotiate with the orcs, and you kind of made that not an option. So, and I go, well, it's all about fighting the orcs. And they go, okay, well, then I won't GM. So, I can't force people to GM something that they don't want to GM. So there always has to be sort of a permissive ability for them to go and run whatever they want. But the problem is when the GM goes, cool, thank you, I can go run whatever I want. You're not forcing me down any sort of, limited set of guidelines. Okay. Now they're just going and doing their own little mini adventure that doesn't really have ties into anything else. So that's kind of the problem with that, is that that gives them the GM freedom, but then when they have that freedom, how do you make that matter? How do you make that count? And then there's the third issue, which is the biggest issue, which is GMs aren't used to not being, God. Right? So, misspelled that, but whatever, goddesses, right? GMs are used to being like, what my word goes and my word says, and I'm the lord of my castle, I'm the lady of my land, and, I'm not saying that that's, I get it. And so, a lot of GMs, when they get these kind of restrictions and permission, they can get very like, well, I'm going to take my ball and go home. And maybe I don't blame them. I mean, they're basically saying, look, I'm not being paid to GM. I'm not going to do this if it's not fun for me. I'm not going to do this if it's, a pain in my butt. So, I get it. So there's been a temptation to try to be as, because of these two issues here, to be as like, hey, whatever you need, whatever you want to run, you go do you, boo-boo. Well, GMs are busy people, and, I don't expect them to sort of pay attention to what's going on in every aspect of every, element of every game. And so a lot of GMs just end up sort of, they kind of just make their own thing, and we kind of go with that. So, that's the kind of problem, But, well, that was the other thing, right? By giving the meta currency to the other players, it was very transparent. And ultimately, it put the power of deciding the fate of the game in the player's hands, right? And so, again, we've talked about this before, so I'm not going to belabor the point too much. But, the way that Dragontide worked is you had this, you had 5 meta currencies. You had supply, wealth, knowledge, influence, and mana. And the idea was that these are super generic resources. So, for example, if you were running an adventure and the players discovered an ancient shrine which was inscribed with knowledge of the ancients, or if they discovered a library and they spent time researching the books, or maybe they found a cache of old scrolls, right? What you could do is just say, hey, everybody gets +3 knowledge. If the group found a cache of equipment and supplies from the bandits that were raiding the village, and they decide to take it, you could say, hey, everybody gets +5 supply. And that knowledge is generic. Once it leaves the session, it's generic. It can be used for anything. Okay, for example, to show you an example, one of the first what we call challenge events, which was like sort of a community challenge. Everybody has to come together, or there's a consequence for the town. Was one of the early ones was called Breaking Waves, and it was the idea that storm season was coming, okay, and the community had to basically build up the seawall before the storm season came, okay? And the bundle, so basically the community had to get 30 progress in order to complete this event, okay? And when you delivered a bundle, you got 1 progress, which it was 1 of 30, right? You need 30 to win. And you also got prestige points, which is like victory points. And a bundle was 10 supply. But that's the key. Obviously, this is a break wall, right? We're imagining this being boulders and stone and rubble and concrete. But you may have gotten your supply from looting, old rusted weapons from a bandit lair. It doesn't matter, right? It's a generic resource. The GM doesn't get to decide where you spend your supply. You might get a bunch of supply from this and spend it here. Or you could spend it somewhere else. Where you choose to spend it is up to you. And obviously, if enough of the community members don't come together, in this case, if the group gets less than half of the progress that they need, then the following locations in the town are permanently destroyed: the fishing dock, beachcombing, Sapphire Beach, the dockside market, the supply depot, the shipping pier. Additionally, all the players' ships have to roll on the ship destruction table. Is this a game or a rant? I'm not sure. I mean, this is a real game. What I'm showing you right now. This is the Dragontide beta that we just ran. Anyways, my point was I tried to solve the issue. The problem is that it made people feel disconnected from the game. So I don't know how to solve it. Oh, well, maybe I do. I don't know. This is why Wilder I don't even know the name of the game. Why Wilder Feast might work. Maybe. And it's because of this idea of potentially living clocks. Gridlock, you're asking, what are we looking at? These are events from the Dragontide game. Okay, like these were all of this season's events. So these were called challenge events. Right? So the first challenge event was housing shortage. Sorry, zoom in. Housing shortage, then famine, then seeds of corruption, which this was born out of a player event where they rescued a bunch of cultists from an island and brought them back to the main town. Breaking waves, that's the one we were just looking at. The withering, and black flags on the horizon. And that was the last thing. So we ran it. There were 2 challenges a month. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the game ran for 3 months. So there were 6 challenges. Anyways, and the idea is that if the group doesn't complete this, the town suffers a penalty. And if the group completes it and even goes above, they can potentially get a bonus. So yeah, but these are just one of the things that the group that someone can use their resources and spend them on. And the idea was that the players were sort of torn, like, how do we work together? Any of these events are too big for one player to complete on their own, so you have to work together as a community. You have to work together. But again, what ended up happening is people disconnected with what the GMs were running because they were just like, just give me the resources so I can go do stuff. And that's not great because then the GMs feel like they're not really doing anything. So where this gets to with Wilderfeast is that the idea of Wilderfeast is pretty basic, which is that you have these scary monsters that are frenzied. They've been infected with this, arcanic virus, curse. It's like a curse virus that basically makes them, they are no longer, what was that Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within? What was the game where like creatures like, or maybe it was a JRPG. Maybe I'm thinking of like, I'm thinking of Kingdom Hearts. Is it Kingdom Hearts where like the monsters or whatever could be like shadowed or something? I'm trying. It's been a long time since I played Kingdom Hearts, but there's a bunch of nerds here. I'm sure somebody knows Kingdom Hearts better than me. Yeah, Spirits Within was the movie. I know. I thought there was some sort of like corrected. Heartless. Okay, that's yeah, the Heartless. Okay, that's exactly it, Jess. Right. So Monster Honey does this for right. So to be clear, Wilderfeast is 100% inspired by Monster Hunter. But yeah, I'm thinking of the Heartless. So the idea is that these are monsters that are out of right. They're out of sync with the community or whatever, or with the natural world. And so you find them, you hunt them. What did I say? Kingdom Hearts. What did I say? Kingdom Hunts. You find them, you hunt them, and then you eat them. So that's the idea of this game. But what made me think that this would be kind of interesting is if the monster itself, was the clock, right? That's my idea. So that the clock actually, instead of being an event, the clock is a thing. And the community can work together to find it, hunt it, and eat it. So instead of being this vague, nebulous thing, it's a monster. So this is predicated, though, on something that I think is very, very potentially unpopular, which is fine because everything I come up with is pretty unpopular. And the idea here is that what it does is it kind of removes GM autonomy, right? Because what I'm actually proposing that we do is that these monsters are kind of a Zetrum, 100%. It is. So I even posted somewhere where I basically said our game is Monster Hunter plus Dungeon Meshi plus Shadow of the Colossus. Right, so it's the same thing as basically the Colossus of the Drylands, basically, and we kind of take this idea and we make that the community project. So the community project is entirely predicated upon monsters, and the reason why I say it kind of removes GM autonomy is because the premise here would be you don't just get to go run whatever adventure you want to run, right? It's like, no, this is a campaign about finding monsters, hunting monsters, and eating monsters. And eating monsters, and by the way, these are predicated on these things. And so, you might have a session about finding monsters or maybe learning of a monster's weakness or trying to do something along that line. And obviously, once a monster is found, you might get a group of people together who get together and go and hunt it. And then if you do hunt it, you do get to eat it and get its powers, because the growth in this game is based off of this. Now, Cinnabos, this is also true. So another part of the game is that not every monster needs to be killed, right? One of the core conceits of the game is that if a monster is frenzied, it probably needs to be put down. But if it's not frenzied, it might just be a monster that is hurt. It might be a monster that is in need. It might be a monster that is dangerous, but it isn't frenzied. And so part of the, there's kind of like there's sort of like an ecological, it's almost a bit like Avatar. Avatar Legends, the PBTA game. In Avatar Legends, the PBTA game, your character has two principles. So for example, you might have, duty, and you might have, your duty to do, and then you might have, independence. And a big part of that game, and then there's a thing called the balance track, that goes from left to right. And, you kind of watch your character move up and down this track and try to maintain balance and all this other stuff. Well, the same thing is kind of true of this game. I think this game is kind of between the idea of, protecting humanity, but also protecting nature, right? And how do you do that? And how do you strike a balance, right? You can't just let the monsters roam and do whatever they want, because they might destroy these communities, and they might wipe out entire, whatever. Humans have a right to exist as well, don't they? But at the same time, if you're only worried about protecting humanity, and you go out and indiscriminately kill people, then you might be doing too much damage to nature. So how do you what's the basis? What's the in between there? So I think the reason why one of the reasons why this is so interesting is because I think that by making the game only about this one thing, that we might be able to avoid the trap that we've always run into with these mega games, which is, what's PF2 about? What's Dragonbane about? Nothing, right? It's about adventuring, whatever that means. It's about being cool. It's about, it's not really about anything. This game is 100% about something. So the two main weaknesses I think we have in a lot of our mega games are, number one, what are these games? I should say, number one, these games aren't about anything. And, Karamus is punching bad guys. But that's clearly not true, because there are definitely people who want to play Pathfinder 2 or who want to play Dragonbane, and they don't want to punch bad guys at all. They want to explore, and they want to maybe do intrigue, or they want to have conversations, or they want to have, or in Dragonbane, they might just be interested. One of the complaints that we got in Dragonbane was because we had these resources system for the crafting system. So you had to go and get like special, it was almost like mining or harvesting in WoW, right? And some GMs were complaining because people were they were signing up for a session, they were going to the adventure, and they didn't really care about going on the adventure. They just wanted to gather resources so that they could go back to town and craft. And the GMs were like, this is boring as hell. Like, I thought they were going to go raid the dragon horde. I thought they were going to go fight the Medusa. And the players were like, no, we're just looking for a stand or we're looking for a deposit, a rich deposit of ember copper. I'd really love to work on that and mine some ember copper on your island. So, talk about communities. So these games aren't really about anything. Pathfinder 2, Dragonbane, whatever, D&D. And the second problem is, believe it or not, people want to play them. This is a huge problem because there's a lot of people who sign up for Northern Reaches or sign up for Dragon Tide, right? These mega games. And the reason they sign up for it is because they just want to play Pathfinder 2 or they just want to play Dragonbane, right? They really like that game. So they're like, oh, this is cool. This is like having that game on tap, just open the spigot. And so people have very strong, belief or connection to these games, and they're kind of like, I signed up to play that game, and now you're messing with that, right? You're putting in clocks, and you're putting in a new crafting system, and you're putting in venues, and you're putting in all these other things that aren't Dragonbane, that aren't PF2. And so some people get really irritated with that because that's not what they signed up for. And so, it started, of course, it's always a joke until it actually happens. But, Dragonbane started as a joke because I was like, man, this will really solve a lot of the PF2 problem that we had at the time, which was leveling. But the thing is, nobody wants to play Wilderfeast. And you know how we know this? Because we looked at their Reddit. And they're like, Reddit had like one post from 3 weeks ago. And the last post before that was like from like 3 months ago. So I was like, strangely enough, I'm like, oh, so this is a game that nobody's playing and nobody wants to play. And I'm like, it may be perfect because it's 100% unabashedly about this one thing. Okay. So if Pathfinder 2 and Dragonbane aren't really about anything, this game is 100% about one thing. And then if people really want to play PF2 because they like PF2 and people really want to play Dragonbane because they like Dragonbane, nobody wants to play Wilderfeast. So in a weird way, that may be perfect. No, the Dragonbane Reddit is bumping. Mega bumping. Take care, random numbers. Good seeing you. No, Dragonbane Reddit's bumping. I'm talking about the Wilderfeast Reddit. The Wilderfeast Reddit may as well not even exist. Wes, I mean, I try it, but I have no desire to play Wilderfeast. Correct. Nobody does. And that's the irony, Wes, is that, a game that might work is a game that nobody wants to play. That's the irony. And that gets back to like the whole, like, what is the point of a mega game? Is the point of the mega game just to get the most number of people playing in the game? If so, that's a very different approach than we have historically taken. And I would say that each season that has passed, we have gotten a little bit more and more generic in the goal or the pursuit of trying to be as accommodating to as many people as possible. Does that make sense? Mesker, you watched Knight's Last Call. Well, that's the deal, Erica. I don't actually like it, right? Like, obviously, the core premise of Wilderfeast is absolutely ridiculous to me. But it's just like Monster Hearts. People are always like, Derek, why did you say Monster Hearts is one of your favorite games? And I said, they're like, you really like teen supernatural romance? You really a big Twilight fan? And I said, no, I actually hate that movie and I hate those books. They're like, so why do you like Monster Hearts? And I go, because it is so unapologetically good. It is just about that thing, and the mechanics of the game are so good at that thing. And remember, as I said, I engage with role-playing games from a systemic purpose. And so when I see a game system engine that can just repeatedly generate those kind of consistent results spot on, in other words, it's accurate and it's precise. Oh boy, that's a high praise for me. This is true. People playing do equal money, but let's take a step back here. There was a time when the Nice Last Call Discord was probably about 100 people, and I'd say 50 to 60 of those people were pretty much signed up mostly to play Northern Reaches. Well, many years later, we still have 60 to 70 people playing Northern Reaches, at least in theory. But I have almost 600 patrons. The vast majority of my players, they don't play in Northern Reaches. So while it is interesting to do it as like a money, to be appealing from a money perspective. And it is true that I do spend a good amount of money because I pay for super high premium Forge and all this other stuff for those games to enable those games. Mostly, as long as they pay for themselves, I consider that to be pretty neutral. And actually, in some of these mega games, when they start to die off, I probably lose money on them. And if that was the case, I would probably just run a 5e thing. But that's not what I care about, and that's not what I have passion or interest for. So again, I would rather make the game that I want to make, even though nobody wants to play it. And the problem is that me being selfish. People say, oh, you're a creator, you should just do what you want to do. Well, I did that with Dragon Tide, and I'm pretty much going to be stripping out most, if not all, of the stuff that I put into it because people didn't like it. So that's not really fair for me, to put my foot down and to be this, inflexible, unmovable, immovable rod with the button pushed. Because what's the point of having a mega game if nobody plays it? Would I rather have a mega game that is my platonic ideal of mega gamedom, or would I rather have a popular mega game? I mean, Draw Steel mega game could work as a codex thing. I mean, again, I think that by and large, I think the main appeal of a mega game is simply that you have a lot of people playing that game, and it gives you a lot of opportunities to run it, and it gives you a lot of opportunities to play it. If you want to run it a normal game, you go, hey, I'm going to run a game on Mondays, and someone goes, oh wow, someone's running a Draw Steel game on Mondays, or someone's running a Draw Steel game, and then Wes goes, I'm running it on Mondays, and you go, Keith goes, dang, I really wanted to play Draw Steels, but I work Mondays, or I have to take the kids to soccer on Mondays. I can't play. And then it's like, well, I guess I'm shit out of luck. So that's the problem. It's like if we had a community of I don't know, 5,000 people all playing Draw Steel, chances are probably pretty good that there'd be Draw Steel games, every day of the week in almost every time zone. But the reality of the situation is, even with several hundred people, there might only be a couple of Fabula Ultima games. There might only be a couple of Pulp Cthulhu games that are being run. And if they fill up, or they're not at a time that works for you, or you yourself know that your schedule is fairly inconsistent, or you can get busy and you don't want to disappoint people by joining a campaign only to have to drop out 2 or 3 weeks in, so you just decide to do the smart, responsible thing and not get involved. Well, that sucks for you. So mega games are nice for me from just a scheduling flexibility standpoint. And even Gary Gygax knew this, because that's why the original form, the way that D&D was run, the way that Gary talked about it in the AD&D first edition DMG, which was, again, Ben Robbins, wrote a blog article about it, and people took it as gospel. But really, Ben Robbins wasn't creating a new thing when he created the West Marches. That was just the name of his campaign. Ben was just saying, I want to run a game like Gary Gygax used to run it. And he's like, and I'm realizing why the game of D&D was set up the way it was, which is, a GM runs games whenever they're available, and you have a stable of 15 to 20 to 30 players. And, when the GM is free and the players, contact the GM and say, hey, we saw that you're free Friday night. Can you run a game for us 5? And the GM says, yeah, sure. Come on by. I'll run the game for them. And the campaign, the section in the AD&D first edition DMG that is labeled the campaign simply meant that rotating roster of people who may never play with each other. It didn't mean some sort of overarching storyline, because none of those things existed. And so essentially, the original concept of D&D was a mega game in that way. Now, Beowulf, I think that could definitely work. And in fact, Beowulf, one of the ideas that I had for this Wilderfeast game was was that everybody who signs up to be a player also has to create a monster, and so you are on the hook to GM. I don't know that look, I'm already shooting myself in the foot here with popularity, but hey. Anyways, I think it's pretty cool. I think it's a pretty interesting idea. We'll see what we can actually come up with it. But again, we're in our off season. So one of the things that we're trying to figure out is to do a Lancer mega game, or Beacon mega game. See whatever works out from a VTT perspective. I do need to review the proposal for the Lancer mega game that a group of people community worked together. They sent it to me when I was at PAX, and I came home from PAX, and then I got sick, and so I've been like a week or 2 weeks behind on everything. So I do need to take a look at that. But again, I was kind of not really worried about it because I knew I wasn't going to launch anything until probably like January. But yeah. I like the idea of people playing games, whether it's a mega game or if it's one GM and 4 players, like the way Gary, the way modern games are intended. It's just a single GM running a campaign. Hey, I'm running a Pathfinder 2 adventure path for people. Great, that sounds awesome. You should totally go and do that. And I completely support that in all of its capacity. Well, instead of piloting a giant robot, you pilot your PC. It's basically, it's literally Lancer, but it's a fantasy game. Beowulf, I think Lancer is super duper mega tactical combat, right? The combats last multiple hours. I think people who are signing up for Lancer are signing up for that. I think they're signing up for the hyper builds and all that other stuff. More than they are signing up for any sort of anything else there. Gridlock says, I don't care about popularity, which made me respect you the most. Yeah, I mean, there are times, I appreciate it. There's certainly a certain amount of cool hipster points I get by being so radically unpopular. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. And we actually have a game going on Fridays now. So fingers crossed that actually lives. We get to play some Fabula Ultima, which will be a lot of fun. And I'm going to be running the One Ring for Bob and Tim and Bob's brother here in the studio to kick us off. Maybe that'll become something. I'm going to be running the One Ring for Moria for the solo game, the community co-op solo game, which will be a lot of fun. And I'm hoping this year last year I ran 2 campaigns, both of them were Torchbearer, for the patrons. For our ticketed users, and I'm hoping this year to maybe run twice that many. I'm hoping to run 4 or 5 games campaigns. Somewhere probably in the 10 to I'll say 8 to 12 session range, but probably around 10 sessions, give or take. I am slated to go to GaryCon in March. So. GaryCon in March. And then after that, I don't know. PAX East, maybe. I think Steven really wants me to go for Roll for Combat. And then Origins, of course. I'm trying to work to get sponsorship at Origins so that I can get a room for the Knights of Last Call, so we can have our own private room for gaming. And then probably PAX West again, maybe. I don't know. Definitely PAX Unplugged. And, of course, obviously, Gen Con. I'm not going to Page because I was just in Philly for PAX. And also, I just kind of need a break from everything. But Page, I've heard, is a lot of fun, a lot of good stuff. And a lot of people come to Page, like a lot of the who's who's. And a lot of people who like going to Page because it's a smaller con, so they kind of just more hang out and have fun with that. So that's cool. Page is cool. It's a Philadelphia area gaming expo for people who don't know what Page is. And Wisconsin does have the cons, right? They've got Gamehole Con, GaryCon. They used to have Gen Con. Yeah, PAX U was a lot of fun. It was weird going to a 3-day con. It felt like it was over before it began in some ways. Yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun. I've never done anything like that on this channel. I've never really played a lot of solo games, even though it won't be fully solo. It'll still be this kind of strange mix. So I'm curious to see how it goes. I think it'll be really, really cool. For sure, when it comes to Moria. Man. It's crazy how many well, we did session 3 this week, maybe Monday. Tuesday, one of those days. I don't know. So we beat the vampire and we have the rod. We have the earth rod. So now we need to go back into the earth cave and go defeat Lich. So, but yeah, we'll keep playing some Final Fantasy as well. Again, I was just so busy this summer because I was going to all these different conventions, working most of them, attending. I mean, I guess it's all work now because of my job, but I was still taking care of my mom a lot. She's gotten a lot better, obviously. Now things have kind of gotten to a new normal. But now that now we're at the end of the year, a lot of the drama and hubbub of the early part of the year is kind of behind me. Again, for the next couple of months, I think hopefully we're going to get a lot of good quality streams, a lot of cool games, and obviously too, there's still a million trillion bazillion things to think about. We've got histories of TTRPGs to talk about, first looks to talk about, more deep dives to talk about. People still want me to make sure I go back to Shadow Deep and keep doing the project design there. Tier rankings for certain games. The campaign series, I think we did. I don't remember what the last one we did. It was Dark Sun, maybe. I don't remember. I know we did Birthright and what did we do? We did Birthright and Eberron. I think we did Birthright and Eberron and maybe Dark Sun. But we have so many more to do there. We got Kryn, we've got Dragonlance, we've got Greyhawk, we've got Mystara. We got all the classics. Some of them I didn't play, so I don't really know how much I can really speak on them intelligently. Forgotten Realms. And I could convince people that Forgotten Realms is actually awesome, and what they know is just a shallow, sad element of the game. I can't answer that, Keith, because we are going to have we're going to have an award show. Hold on a second. We're going to have an award show where we're gonna kind of take a look at that stuff. Math guy. Speaking of being unpopular, right? Let's do a last look at 4E classes. I love calling it a last look. That's actually really clever. Hey, does anyone care about talking about 4th edition characters? Yeah, let's go. Let's do it. That's what we're here for, Math guy Dave. Keith, I would totally wear a suit and tie, except I'm pretty sure I have fatted out of probably the last suit that I had that could still fit me. Most of my suits I probably bought when I was, 215, I'm 6'1", 6'2", 215, 210. And right now I was in my 240s. I was getting close to my 230s, but alas, the last couple of months, with the holidays and travel and sick and it got cold. And so now I'm like back up to like 245. So a little tight across the chest and the belly, got to work on that. That's the other thing, this channel and all this other stuff. I'm Midwest thin. It doesn't feel like it, I'll tell you that. But no, I mean, I have been heavier, in this channel. I mean, I'm not sure when or how or where, but at some point during this channel's history, I was over 300 pounds again. My weight has been pretty consistent. It's been consistently inconsistent pretty much my entire adult life. And sometimes I was very heavy and really strong because I was lifting a ton. Never like jacked, right? Like never like 2% body fat, but fat strong. But I've also just been fat. And so, but I've also been skinny when I was like in the last 30 years, I have almost had a combined lift total of 1,000 pounds and been like 275, but I've also been down to 185 and was, running 50 plus miles a week. So it's been kind of a roller coaster, mostly because I just get bored and I get interested in other things. And then I go start doing that. And then it kind of like changes up and my body can't change and keep up as quickly as I want to because I get bored and I want to do something new. And then eventually the whole thing collapses. And then like when I hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2018, I came back, I was in I was in great shape. I had lost a lot of weight, probably some muscle, but I was really in great shape. But I was tired and I developed horrible plantar fasciitis to the point where it's like I could almost not walk. And I put on and plus when you get back from the trail, you're eating 10,000 calories a day just to maintain that. And then you come home and suddenly you're not walking 15, 20 miles a day and you still want to eat. So, then you get fat. But you don't get fat strong, you just get fat. 1,000 Club is a huge goal. Yeah, I gave up on the goal because I'm not going to deadlift anymore. I might trap bar deadlift, but honestly, I'm not going to I'm not going to deadlift. So I kind of gave up on that. But I still like squatting and I still like bench pressing. But I'm in my 40s now. I don't really concerned as much about pure strength and competition legal lifts. I'll use a machine and not feel bad about it if I think it's going to do a better job at keeping me safe. Because honestly, while lifting has been really good in my life, it's also been I've also hurt myself. So thank God I've never actually ruptured anything or tore anything, but I have definitely gotten hurt before. Yeah, through hike is rough, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot more creaking in my 40s. Yeah. Well, thank you, Keith. I'll take that as a compliment. Yeah, it peaks in. But again, I've lived most of my life fairly active because most of my hobbies and my work has always been fairly sedentary. So I play a lot of racquetball and things come and go. I used to rock climb a lot, and then I ripped out my labrum in my shoulder, and I had to have shoulder surgery, and I really haven't rock climbed as much from that as much. I used to run a lot, and then I got the horrible plantar fasciitis, and so now I don't run anymore. As you get older and older, the injuries and the surgery start adding up, and you start getting less and less and less and less that you can do. So I try to keep it active, but it's getting harder. It's getting harder, for sure. But I still love role-playing games. It's a lot of fun. My interest in them, I must admit now, it's more academic. That saddens me a little bit, I think, sometimes. The passion is there, but it's more of the passion of a researcher than it is the passion of a participant. It's the difference between being and again, this is something I'm aware of and I need to change it. Well, maybe I don't need to change it, but it's the difference between someone who is a football player, a football coach, and a football commentator, right? And in my case, I feel like via the channel especially, and what people come to me for, I feel more and more like a coach or a commentator than I do a player. And that sometimes saddens me because, I want to play too. But I'm also aware at that I've played a lot of role-playing games, so it's in the past. So it takes a lot to really, get me excited, unfortunately. I'm a little bit jaded, I suppose, in that respect. Yeah. Get back to the first looks. These games aren't going to look at themselves, right? I need to look at them. That's awesome. Well, we were talking about Wilderfeast before, how nobody wants to play it, which might make why it's perfect for playing. Little do they know, Shu. Little do they know. I don't know. I think it's cool. Some of my favorite, I'll be honest with you, some of my absolute favorite moments from this entire channel's history have been this last year when I would go onto my Discord and we have we have 5 channels that are dedicated for because our channel's fully boosted to the highest level of Discord, so we have the most bit rate, the highest bit rate available, highest all the channels, all that stuff, and we have 5 channels that are dedicated to video chats for people running games. And there was numerous times this last summer where all of them were full. So you had somewhere between 35, we'll call it 35 people playing role-playing games. And, that's awesome. And I'm not gonna lie. Like two or three of those games were probably Pathfinder 2, and we're probably coming from Northern Reaches, and maybe we had a Dragon Tide game, but someone's running their Fabula Ultima game, and someone else is running their Pulp Cthulhu game. Someone's running their Pendragon game, or someone's running their whatever. I mean, seeing that like just filled my heart with so much like joy and pleasure, and I'm not a super emotional guy, but I will say that if we can pull this off with Origins 2026 Game Fair in Columbus, and we can actually get the sponsorship through, and we can get our own dedicated area, and we can actually get last year we didn't have any of that, and we had like 20 something, 24, 23 people show up. If we can get 30 or 35 people to show up, and I walk into a room, and everyone there we're all part of the same community, and everyone's there, and they're all playing games with each other and running games for each other, or shooting the shit and just vibing and feeling like they belong there because they're amongst friends, they're amongst like-minded individuals. They feel welcome, they feel included. Like that will be a top 10 life moment for me to see that. Again, we've gotten pretty close with just even this last Origins, which was really incredible, and it gave me the inspo to say I need to get on this. Even if it's going to cost me money, I need to do this because I want to provide as much as I can for this community and give them the opportunity to have the best experience that they could. So I thought that'd be pretty cool. Derek, were you drama club? I was not, Keith. I was in high school. I was. I played hockey. I played like 1 year tennis, hockey, National Honor Society. What else did I do? Yearbook, school newspaper, and quiz bowl. Quiz challenge or whatever. I think that's all I did. Yeah. Yearbook, school newspaper, hockey, tennis, a photography club, kind of. It was an unofficial club. Yeah. And yeah. But yeah, no, I wasn't. Yeah, I was a nerd. Yeah, let's be clear. There was no role-playing game club, but if there was, I would definitely have been in. Yeah, back then it was still kind of, it was still kind of not really fully accepted the way it was. It was the late 90s, things were different than they were now. Although we used to play in junior high, we used to play in the school libraries. The librarians were really cool, and they like actually supported us in playing. We used to stay there after school and stuff. Yeah. But I was not like ostracized or anything in high school or anything like that. I mean, I was friends with a lot of people. I wasn't just friends with like academics and stuff like that. I mean, my high school was very weird. It was very not cliquey. Like we had members, we had varsity football members who were part of our varsity show choir. The girl who she and I were sort of, competing back and forth for who was going to be number one and who was going to be number two in the class in terms of like GPA rankings. She was also like the head cheerleader. So, like it was, and again, I played hockey. Sure, I was, captain of the quiz bowl team, but I also played hockey. So it was, it was kind of a weird high school in that way. Not very clicky. I mean, I'm happy about it. I didn't have the kind of, drama that so many other folks had in that respect. Yeah. So Beowulf says there was a time when all the video channels were full, and there were 2 or 3 other KOLC games being run in satellite discords. Right. So that's what I really want to. That's my goal. Is to get people playing. It's one thing to talk about games. It's another thing to look at games. It's another thing to buy games. At the end of the day, I mean, yeah, I think we want to play it. That's a good way to put it, Shu, for sure. Oh dang! See, now I want to go to Paige. hang out with Hodop. Jess says she experienced way worse bullying in middle school than in junior high or high school. Yeah, for me, the worst bullying occurred in junior high school. Middle school, like well, it depends on your definitions, but for me, junior high school is like 7th and 8th grade, and like those were pretty bad. Keith, I do not. I do not. I do not. I have, but never for like randos. I kind of don't run games for randos. The Torchbearer games were really fun, and I was very happy with. Some it didn't hit for some people, and they were very open about that, and that's totally good. I get it. I felt I didn't feel bad that people, I didn't feel bad that people not everyone loved the game. But what I did love that some people were like, wow, that was surprisingly awesome. Not just like for the game, but it was like one of the best experiences I've ever had. People talking about like the social games and how they, felt like they were some of the coolest encounters that they ever had, and social conflicts and everything like that. That was really, 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 really satisfying to see people be super excited about that. Right. Yeah. Well, my high school was like 500. My class was like 480 or 490 or something. My class was like 2,000. My high school had 2,000 people. Four grades, 9, 10, 11, 12, about 500 per class, give or take. So it's pretty big. Karma, that was more with the voice channels per se. We used to be much more discreet about zones. Like zones used to mean a lot more than they used to mean. So now they don't mean as much. So it's not as important, basically. Your high school is the size of our class. Awesome. That's the size of my entire K through 12 school. She says, "Holy fuck!" I think he's talking about Beowulf. Yeah, that's gruff, Beowulf. Yeah, sure. No, I agree. Well, I mean, Karama, technically there's also the calendar, right? People should be able to check that out, right? No, I think overall, am I a local legend in the hobby? No, actually, Keith, if anybody knows me locally in the gaming scene, it's usually because of Magic the Gathering. There's a lot of people in my area who only know me as Griff or Gryffindor, because that's like my nickname from all the local card shops, and most people that know me in a gaming sense know me through Magic the Gathering, more than anything else. So, but even then, that's been a while, so that's kind of faded off, because I stopped playing Magic like a lot. Like I used to play multiple times a week. I probably play, or I would say probably 2018. What do you mean by when you say they used to mean more? Oh, the zones. Just that there was like specific restrictions on the zones, about the type of adventures that you could run. That there was, different rewards that got given to you from different zones. That like there used to be like a lot more. Now it's just like, oh, just run it in overflow. Well, yeah, because all the zones are basically the same. There's nothing. There's no difference between the zones, basically. If you run a game in X or you run a game in Y, it's pretty much the same thing. Whereas it meant a lot more. Question from Andre. How was your experience with getting your group on board for heavy lore-dependent games like Legend of the Five Rings? Well, the answer is I didn't lore dump them. And that's basically the answer. I was more focused on having them understand, to me, the idea of what it meant. What was the core of the game? For me, Legend of the Five Rings is about Legend of the Five Rings 5th edition is about the struggle of a samurai between their duty and obligation, their giri, and their very real and human passionate desire, right? Their ninjo. And I really wanted to focus on my group understanding that as the core of what Legend of the Five Rings was. I didn't care if they knew about pretty much all the lore. I mean, if they picked it up and when they were introduced to it, that's fine. But to me, that stuff wasn't important. Because to me, Legend of the Five Rings, at least again in the context of the 5th edition, is not about the lore. The lore is, I hate to say it, but unimportant. What's important to me is that the group feels that pressure to be honorable, but also to be true to oneself. To feel the pressure and the desire to want to unmask so they can clear all their stress. But realizing that is going to have a consequence in this world. That being so blunt and so truthful and showing these emotions in that way is a vulnerability. And that there are fates worse than death. Right? Duty is heavier than a mountain. Death is lighter than a feather. I kind of explained it to them via Wheel of Time quotes. So that was my response. That's how I basically sold them on it. So I really wanted them to understand ninjo and giri. I wanted them to understand honor, glory, and status. And I wanted them to fundamentally, want to interact. And from a gameplay perspective, I wanted them to enjoy the approach-based nature of the rings, and really get into that. The other stuff, it didn't really matter. Exactly, Wes. I find pre-established lore for pretty much every setting to be unimportant. It's more about the story we are telling. The only time I've really truly ever had, the only time I've ever really truly had people care about the lore is when we built the lore together, because we did a collaborative world build, right? Through session 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. Oh, 100%. Yeah, they didn't know anything. I mean, like our last campaign was Lion. They were all Lion samurai, and they all served a single daimyo. But technically, one of the characters or one of the players was he was born in the Crane clan. He went to a Crane school, but he was married into the daimyo's family. So he was like he was married to the daimyo's niece. So now he was a Matsu, but he was born a Crane, I suppose you could say. But anyways, so all I explained to them was, the geopolitical situation of the Lion and the Crane. I very quickly, going back to, the tournament of the kami, and then I talked about the land and the restriction, and how one is the strong right hand of the emperor, and the other one is the political left hand of the emperor, and the lion and the crane are at territorial disputes. The crane are seeking to expand and blah blah blah, and we're going to focus on this relatively small provincial daimyo who has their province on the border with the Crane lands. And as the eve of war between two great clans looms, we will begin our tale. And that was really about it. And that's all they need to know. Okay, so we've got two clans that have been kind of sparring and duking it out since the beginning of time, and now the one clan has been hit hard by natural disasters and is potentially looking to expand. And whether if they can't seize it politically, they are prepared to seize it militarily. And we are a small province, small daimyo on a small province, and this is where we're going to begin our story. And that's where we begin our story. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it to Page, hold up, but never say never. When is Page? I don't know if Stephen Glicker's going. Oh, it's the 15th. Ugh. Yeah, sounds like there's going to be a good group of people there. Frank Metzer, Zeb Cook, Professor DM, Kelsey Dion's going to be there, Mike Shea, Luke Stratton, Justin Alexander. Good stuff. Wheel of Time does have a TTRPG. It was a 3.5 version. That's correct. Actually, I think it was a 3.0 version. Actually, I think it came out real early in the 3rd edition life cycle. So technically, you would call it a D20 version. Yeah, I mean, if everybody's all bought in, that's great. I mean, I think that's one of the fun things for me about playing something like a Lord of the Rings game, or I guess a Star Wars game or whatever, is that most people have a pretty good operating understanding, mostly, especially if you're nerd adjacent, of these properties. Wheel of Time, maybe not as much, but if I ran a game set in Westeros, if I ran a game set in Star Wars, and I start talking about the Force, or if somebody shows up with a red lightsaber, you get it. You know what's going on. You know who these people are. So there's something absolutely hugely valuable about that, for sure. So I definitely respect that. Alrighty. Well, I know these are always one of my famous last words, but I think I'm going to probably dip out here. This was a lot of fun. We hung out. We even hit our 2 goals. That was great. That was unexpected. I was just wanted to check my lights. You guys came in and were awesome. So we did convince some knights to come on. So I did send some messages over to Bob's way. So I think Bob is going to join us on Tuesday. I think we're going to do a first look at the game that almost won our Friday night game. So we're going to do Coriolis. So that's going to be a Bob. There we go. Again, this would have been an all-timer, because this almost won the vote for what game we were going to play, and no one's read it, and no one knows the rules. I mean, we know we played Forbidden Land. I mean, we know Year Zero engine, so we know that. But yeah, that was a close call, and so that'll be Tuesday, and then I don't know. It might be a first look heavy week, but I also want to do more draw steals. I don't know. We may have to do another 3 or 4 stream week. I'm sorry. We just might have to do it. Although the weekend will be busy, because actually I take that back. Wow, never mind. Because Friday I'm actually playing. We're doing session 1 of Fabula Ultima. Got to get ready for that. And then Saturday I'm supposed to play board games. And then Sunday they are supposed to be over. Bob and Tim and Bob's brother Danny are supposed to come over here and play the One Ring on Sunday. So a week from now we'll be playing live. Fingers crossed. Now, to be clear, it's, we'll see how it goes. It might not be everything's perfect. I mean, it'll be better than the root stream, but it's kind of more of a. I was considering originally making it a Patreon only stream, just because I didn't want to be publicly embarrassed, because we've never streamed from this setup before. The guys are going to be on headsets that they've never been on before, so there's going to be, there might be some rough edges. So I didn't know if I wanted to put that out there to public. So we'll make a game time decision, but I imagine we'll make it public. So we'll go with that. So yeah, that's Sunday, and then Friday I'm playing Fabula Ultima. Tuesday Bob will be over. So maybe tomorrow. I don't know. We may have to stream Monday. We're gonna stream Thursday, obviously. So yeah, if I stream Monday or Wednesday, that's pretty much every day this week. Next week will be gaming or gaming adjacent, because Monday would be a stream. Tuesday would be a stream with Bob. Wednesday would be a stream. Thursday would be a stream. Friday would be my Fabula Ultima games. Saturday would be board games with friends, and then Sunday would be actual play of One Ring. So, well, the good news is streams make me money. So it's not just about comfort. It's also, put it another way, my Patreon basically pays for my bills. It pays, it pays the electric bill, it pays the mortgage, it pays the car insurance, it pays, the grocery bill. So basically, the Patreon, it's now it doesn't, if it doesn't put anything into savings and it doesn't put anything into an emergency fund. But it basically, keeps me from being in the red. So basically, the money I get, like for me to spend on, games or, going to a convention or, whatever, buying a new light, that basically only comes from the tip, the super chat and the tips, right? So in a way, this is like my money. I mean, I guess it's all my money, but the Patreon pays my bills, and then this is for me, for saving a little bit and for having some discretionary income. So it is clear. Which board games? I have no idea. Arcs has been very popular. We have not played. Well, we haven't played the Blighted Reach yet. I don't think we're going to for a while. But we have not played a game with leaders and lore yet, and so that could be on the agenda, for sure. And the last time we played, I got more embarrassed than I've ever been in a game in a long time. My buddy Ross won so badly, it was disturbing. Me and my other friend came in. I don't even consider us in second and third place. Even though it was a 3-player game, I consider myself in like 5th place, 6th place. I mean, Pumpkin, there's so many things that I want to do, and I have this amazing community. We were joking on Friday about, like, the guys were like, well, we feel bad, Derek. Like, what game do you want to play, right? You should just pick what game we're going to play. And I said, guys, don't worry about it. Like, I have so many opportunities. I said, I have an entire community of gamers who probably would love to do nothing more than play a game with me. I said, I could probably hop onto the Discord right now and make a message at everyone. Hey, I'm about to start a new campaign in 5 minutes. The first 5 people who enter this channel get to play in the game with me. And I'd probably fill it out. So I said, don't worry about it. That being said, one of the things that I want to do more is run games on Tabletop Simulator, and I want to run Arcs and Oath. I'd love to play some Gloomhaven, maybe even some Descent, Battlestar Galactica, which is an incredible game. So many of my favorite board games. So I'd love to play more tabletop board games. So there's that. Another thing, I would love to have, I've talked about this before in the past, I would love to do a, using Tabletop Simulator to run a Kings of War, which is a tabletop miniature, army game. It's a rank and flank game, where you have units of men who march in formation, and I wanted to run. The term campaign came from military campaigns, right? And so I've always wanted to run a big multiplayer war game, like a miniature war game. And Tabletop Simulator has some really great support for people playing, like, Warhammer 40K or whatever. And this Kings of War game I'm particularly a fan of because it's pretty simple. That's what makes it easy. Some people don't like it because it's too simple, but I think it works good. Anyways, like doing a competitive, campaign where different people have different armies, and you get scheduled to play this week, and you have to play in some sort of ladder or league, or for control of an area or something like that. I thought that'd be amazing. I've always wanted to do that. We talked about the Panic at the Dojo League, right? The competitive, where there's not even a GM, it's just party versus party, and you join a team. And it's a three man versus 3-man teams, 3-man squad versus 3-man squad. I'd love to do that. I'd love to do a Blood Bowl league and play Blood Bowl. I mean, there's so many fun things that a community of nerds should be able to do. I know that when, like, Marvel Rivals was out, I know Bob and Ryan and a bunch of other people were all playing Marvel Rivals together and stuff like that. I think that's fun. I think that's great. We should all just game together. It's good stuff. So unfortunately, I have to spend all this stupid time streaming and talking to people. It's crazy. Anyways, good stuff. I'm looking forward to it. 2026. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it'll be fun. All right, folks, I'm going to get going because it sounds like I might be streaming all this week. But I'll definitely be back on Tuesday. And Battletech League, that'd be sweet. I have my buddy George runs it. He's been playing Mega Mech for like a decade or more. So he's a BattleTech pro. BattleTech League would be sweet. BattleTechs I couldn't get. I don't know that I want to play it in person with real dice because yeah, it'd be brutal. But yeah. So that is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you guys next time. Oh, there he is. Look, he's there. Yes, or more. So, thanks for joining, and I'll see you guys next time on Knights of Last Call. Peace out, everybody.